Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is December 2nd, early in the morning, 2024. I'm getting another best of episode ready for you guys. Staying on the theme of last night's UFO marathon, we're going to do a 3-episode UFO marathon tonight, and it's going to start out with Robert Stanley. We're going to talk about fallen angels, UFOs, and consciousness evolved. And then we're going to move on to episode 24 with Dave Scott of Spaced Out Radio. We're going to talk again about alien encounters, UFOs, and then we're going to finish that up with episode 31 with UFOs at the Drive-In with Preston Dennett. So this ought to be a pretty interesting show. It's going to be 3 episodes. I hope you guys are enjoying the best of series that we're doing for the month of December. And we're going to bring 2-3 videos every night for the next month and a half until we're finished with it. And I hope you guys enjoy. And let's get down to the show. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today, our guest is Robert Stanley. His website, unicusmagazine.com, is pretty impressive. I recommend you go over there and check it out. My cat, lately, is doing okay. She likes the frequency to help her kidneys, I guess. Those who have been listening to the show know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you should probably listen to an older episode, because I'm not going to keep rehashing the same old thing. But it definitely is interesting how this kidney frequency is keeping my cat alive, and she has to have it. It's her regular medicine now. If she listens to the frequency, she'll be fine for a couple days, and while she's fine for the couple days, she doesn't want anything to do with it. She won't listen to it, and then she'll start getting sick again, or her kidneys will stop working, and we'll put the frequency on for her, and she'll literally cuddle up with the speaker when she knows that she needs it. It's very interesting. She knows when she needs it, and that's when she'll use it. You can't give her the frequency without her being sick. Like, once she has the frequency and she's fine, she doesn't want anything to do with it anymore until she's sick and not well again. It's very strange. Nothing like I've ever experienced. So we're going to be taking her down Monday and getting her blood work done again. So just to give everybody an update on that. We've been learning a lot on this show as we go from guest to guest. We definitely have been learning a lot about UFOs and consciousness and how the brain works and Q and what's going on in the world today. All of this wool and deception that's being pulled over our eyes. And Robert Stanley is the perfect person for us to talk to. He's going to wrap everything up nice in a bow and kind of give it to us like, here you go. This is pretty much all of what you've learned in a nutshell, and this is what it means. And I couldn't think of anybody else to have on at this time other than him to explain to us what's going on in the world. So let's give it a listen, and we'll be right back with Robert Stanley right after this. Well, welcome back to Conflict Radio. We're with Robert Stanley. His website, unicusmagazine.com, is a pretty awesome website. I suggest maybe going there and taking it out. And his podcast, the Unicus Radio Hour, is available. You want to tell everybody where they can find that?
Sure, yeah. If you go to my website, unicusmagazine.com, there's a navigation bar at the top. You can just click radio. And I'm also doing a podcast with Jay Campbell. If you scroll down there, the homepage, you'll see that it's called the Divine Light Podcast. So I'm actually doing a couple shows right now, and plus I'm being interviewed by people like yourself. So I've been really kind of busy lately.
Well, I mean, you got a great voice for radio, and you really have some very interesting topics that you discuss. I would expect we're going to be hearing a lot more from you. Now, what's going on with the fallen angels? I do want to talk about the fallen angels, and I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts lately, and you talk about how we are the fallen angels. Can you can you kind of give us an idea of what's going on with the fallen angels?
Yeah, it's a kind of complicated, but it's important because it puts everything in the proper context. And we're okay. Are we related to the fallen angels? Yeah. Are we them? Here's where it gets a little strange. Apparently, certain bloodlines are chosen or have been cultivated so that the souls of the fallen angels can incarnate and walk among us, so that they can continue their conquest of this world. Now, some people say they seeded us here, and there may be some truth to that. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out. But it for sure, we've never been alone, and we've never been left alone by both sides. There definitely are two sides to the equation. One appears to be reptilian in nature, multidimensional beings, and the other one is humanoid or more human. They're both humanoid, but so you have these two competing factions and a lot of gray area in the middle. There's in fact, we seem to be a hybrid between the two. What we think of ourselves as modern humans is not something simply evolved from apes. We've been modified, and I guess specifically for purposes that we don't always understand.
So the reptilians, they're not. You think that they're fallen angels, or I'm trying to understand how this all comes into the whole religious and what we're reading about in the Bible and how. I mean, did it say anywhere in the Bible about reptilians?
Yeah, actually it does. I was talking to yesterday Jay Campbell, and I interviewed Pierre Sabak, and he's written a few books about this. And angelology is a real discipline, a study, a legitimate study. Although it's open to interpretation as to the various forms of angels. We know there's quite a few, but the highest form, at least the way it's structured, the hierarchy by the Catholic Church, they say the seraphim is the most powerful, and that is the reptilians. And they are unusual in that they are typically very bright or radiant, and they also have the ability to either change their shape or hypnotize us into seeing something other than what they really are, which is very strange when you think about it, but not entirely impossible. But yeah, it's mentioned in the Bible. I think it was Moses' father. I forget his name. Amram, something like that. And he talks about this particular angel having the appearance of a viper, which is a snake. So they're not entirely serpent-like, but they're reptilians or reptoids that have the reptilian features. Some of them have scaly skin. Some of them have like horns or appendages on their head. The thing is that both sides of the equation, unfortunately, are fighting with one another, and we're kind of caught in the middle of it. And they do not want us to know much of what's going on. I guess it's easier to keep us compliant. Yeah. I'm guessing that's part of it. I really don't know, but for sure they have pitted us against each other so that we're much more easier to control. That's real obvious, and you see that happening still. Thousands of years later, they're still doing that to us.
Yeah. So do you think the reptilians are like out there? They're the ones flying around in the UFO craft and such, or is there?
Well, yeah. Actually, it's all of the above. You have all different kinds of species that are flying around in craft. In fact, that was one of the things that really got me going. Like I said, Jay Campbell introduced me to Pierre Sabak and his work, mostly etymology about understanding the origins of words, and how there seems to be there's some really amazing things just hidden in plain sight if you start looking for it in the various languages. Because we seem to think that all the peoples and the cultures and the languages are all separate. And that's not true. They're very much connected. They always have been. The planet's not that big. So for example, though, there's something. The thing that really triggered Pierre was he studying language, he found, and religion, he said the word for angel, malach, is almost identical to the word for sailor. So malach can mean an angel and or a sailor. And which makes it, why does that make any difference? Because they come in ships, not boats on the water, but ships, space ships. That's what we call them. The word UFO is like conspiracy theory. It's designed to kind of put up a mental block. It's like, oh, it has no identity, or we can't figure it out, so we'll just call it an unidentified thing. No, it actually has a very clear identity, and the occupants are well known. They've been here forever, and we are related to them. It doesn't mean that. Oh, the other thing that since you brought it up, it's not so clear cut as like, oh, all reptilians are bad and all humans looking, whatever, aliens or angels are good. It's not that way. There are people souls that cross over, okay, that just because of free will, they can choose, and they do choose which side they want to serve, be a service to self or service to others, or you could say the dark side of the force for those that have gone completely selfish and are greedy and corrupt and cruel. It happens. Even the good guys fall in, and sometimes it goes the other way. The bad guys can suddenly develop a conscience and say, I don't want to do this anymore. And actually, they become some of the biggest proponents for positivity and goodness and kindness and all that stuff. It's a mixed thing, and it's not very clear cut. So there's a huge gray area there.
So do you think that we know what we are? Like I know that, at least I think I know that I'm a human, right?
Uh-huh.
Do you think that the reptilians that look like human, or the aliens that look like human, do you think that there's some of them that think they're human and they're not?
They think they're human, but they're not.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I never really considered that before. There's a lot of manipulation. I think you and I were talking about it off the air about the MK Ultra programs, these mind control, the Mockingbird stuff, Project Artichoke, Bluebird, all that crap. It's more about controlling a person's soul than their mind, and there's a lot of that's been going on here. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't just limited to this world, that the conflict is pretty far flung, at least throughout this region of space. And it seems to be relatively old. But then again, I'm not sure. I think in other dimensions, time as we know it doesn't even exist. So it's possible that this is all just being permitted to play itself out, and it's not that as big a deal as it may seem to us while we're here in this limited format. But ultimately, though, everything is being revealed, which I'm kind of getting tired of it. To tell you the truth, it's like I've been saying this since 2013 when I was first informed that was going to happen. And the purpose of it, and you probably heard me say this before, but for people who've never really heard me say this before, it's important. When I asked some of the contacts that I have, I would consider to be benevolent beings beyond this world, and I mentally asked them, how is this going to be resolved? Because I don't think we can do it on our own. And then I was almost immediately shown in my mind's eye, like I guess you call it telepathy. They were showing me that everybody was going to be forced to make a decision because everything was going to be revealed between 2013 towards the end of, and then 10-year window from 2013 to the end of 2022 would be 10 years. And part of the reason for it is this is not some esoteric thing. There's actually the whole planet, our entire solar system, in fact, is gone into it's always moving through space, right?
Yeah,
and there's something called space weather, right? Space weather. And it fluctuates all the time, just like the regular weather on the planet, but it's connected. It's all connected. So NASA calls this particular cloud of energy that we're in right now, they call it the fluff. I have never figured out why. I guess it's not important. Esoterically, people in the New Age or metaphysical movement, they would call it the photon belt or the photon zone. But it's all it is increasing, or it's amplifying our consciousness. that extra energy that now this, in fact, this is what's driving climate change throughout the entire solar system. All the planets, they all are experiencing climate change. So it can't be due to carbon emissions. It's because when I say a cloud of energy, one of the things that utterly confounds the scientists at NASA is how come everything isn't burning up? We've entered this giant cloud of what they call charged particles, but you could just say it's just energy. And from their perspective, they're thinking it should just be burning up everything in the solar system, because there's so much energy in this cloud. I guess it's a small form of a nebula or something like that. But anyway, it was shown to me, and I wasn't the only one that saw us coming. And so as everything is being revealed, it's going to force everyone to make a choice. And although it seems very simple, do you want to choose the dark side of the force, or do you want to work with the light? That's really not. It has a huge implication for us individually and collectively. And the thing is, a lot of people have, because we've been, there's so many layers of lies being told here, that it's shocking as everything's being revealed, like the pedophilia and adrenochrome and all the corruption and stuff. So it's hard. It's a very, very difficult time. It's a transition, what we're going through, but ultimately we're being forced to make a choice. And the only way we can anybody can make a well-informed decision is they have to have all the information.
Yeah. So, now, there's a lot of fact actually that backs up that our consciousness was at a higher level.
Yeah.
Many, many years ago in ancient civilizations. Do you think we were going through a cloud then?
Yeah, it's a cyclic thing.
Yeah.
And they say like the ages in Hindu cosmology, they talk about the different ages or yuga, they call it. And so in fact, and the Mayas, that's what they were alluding to in their calendar as well. So end of the Mayan calendar was not the end of the world. It was the end of an age or it's the beginning of the end, I should say, of an age or a cycle. And so the beginning of the cycle is always the most difficult, like the transition point. It's very turbulent and dramatic. But that's what we're going through. And that's why you see the people who are very much negative and dark in their hearts have become increasingly so. Whereas those of us who are in the light have gone, it's amplified us, and so that we're actually increasing our service to others.
So what are we in for? What comes with consciousness evolution? What are we in for? What are we looking forward to experiencing?
Part of that is a very personal choice, not just good and evil, but because we have free will, we can, and we have imaginations for a reason. It's like that's where all our creativity comes from. So what we visualize, is what we will manifest. Some people say you create your own reality, but we're doing that together. So I think we're going to find that, and that's why a lot of people were attracted to social media initially, like, oh, we can just do all kinds of stuff together. And then it turned out, oh, that was a trap. It's more like anti-social media. Now they're censoring pretty much everybody about everything and spying on everybody and stuff. So we'll manifest a much cleaner system for communicating and collaborating with one another, those of us who are service to others. And we will censor out all those who don't want to participate. Just like the dark side, they're trying to censor us, right? That's what they're doing to everybody that they don't agree with. Well, we are going to do that too, but not in a very cruel or corrupt manner. We're just do something else, and they're not invited. They just aren't going to be invited. And I personally don't think they would want to participate in something that's positive anyway.
Do you think that there's a true evil there that we're going to have to go up against?
Oh, it's always been there. That's, in fact, okay, the analogy that a lot of people use is that this is a classroom, and that not everybody graduates at the same time. However, sometimes there are the group graduations, and I think that's really what's coming up here, is a lot of us are going to graduate to a different level of reality. And it's a choice. But then again, you also have to qualify. You have to have done the work. And that's where some people will fail badly, is because they chose to be lazy or ignorant. And there's, again, it's a free will. If you want to do that, fine, but there's consequences for that. I mean, they say ignorance is bliss, but it's also a very, it's a bad choice. I mean, it's like, especially if you're on a battlefield, right? You can't afford to be ignorant, because that can put you into harm's way.
So as we go through this cloud and our consciousness evolves, now, is it possible you think that the other side is going to maybe put stuff in the water, or I guess we're hearing about fluoride and whatnot, like they're gonna try to keep our consciousness suppressed?
Yeah, that's what 5G is all about. It's because they really don't want us. They're desperate to retain control over us, physically and spiritually. So that's why they're broadcasting 5G not only on the ground but from space down onto the planet. There's no reason to do that other than they're trying to interfere. I mean, the difference is, I don't know if you've seen that on my website at the homepage at unicusmagazine.com. If you scroll down, I've got these different categories, and one of the folders is the cosmic web of light, and that was shown to me back in the 1990s. I guess you could call it telepathy, but I was actually seeing it, so it's more like a little movie. It was a little more than a movie. I mean, because I was actually feeling it. Like, it's weird. It was almost holographic. And the thing is, I thought it was my imagination or something weird was going on, and then years later I found out, no, scientists actually know that this exists. So in other words, when you can see the graphics information on my webpage, but I'm just going to tell you for radio audience. When you look out at the stars at night in the sky, they're all connected through a web of light. But we cannot see that web of light with our normal eyes, but you can see it with your spiritual eyes, because it's moving at a different vibratory rate than we can possibly see. I mean, our eyes, I think, in fact, our whole body has been kind of detuned or dumbed down, genetically modified, so that we're essentially we're good slaves. We're much more subservient in this format. But there's aspects of us that can be elevated, and that's part of what's going on here. So not only is everything, when I say everything's going to be revealed, I know that just sounds like a very mundane statement, like, oh yeah, okay. You don't understand. I didn't understand. They didn't show me that. They just made it clear, everything. So now, like, it isn't just the pedophilia and the adrenochrome and the corruption and the secret space program. And I mean, it's the fallen angels and stuff. It's like, it's everything, and it's really overwhelming. And a part of what I'm talking about is that people are, at some point, as the energy keeps ramping up, it's not that we're, what did you call it about our consciousness? It's being, some people call it ascension. It's
evolving.
It's not. It's not really, though. It's we have been dumbed down. So what's happening is, you could say, like, firewalls have been erected in our consciousness, and as the energies increase, they're amplified. Right, our consciousness is being amplified. So what's happening is it's bypassing the barriers, the firewalls that have been put up, and it's breaking those things down. The partitions are literally coming down, and so we're starting to see and feel and hear and know things that we simply wouldn't even imagine before. But I'm just kind of warning people, it's not your imagination when you start seeing things or hearing things or feeling things that you may have thought impossible in the past. It's real, because the universe is multidimensional. We are multidimensional, and the truth is, we're not just these little some people call them what they call meat suits or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not
just
these
we're just made
physical
out of
formats.
matter.
Okay, we're far more than that, and more importantly, when you look, especially, I would encourage people to go to my website, unicusmagazine.com, scroll down where it says the Cosmic Web of Light. Look at that. You need to look at that because, and that's why I made that, is for everybody to kind of get it's a graphic image, but it'll help if you hold that in your mind's eye, and then you find time to really like meditate or be calm or quiet and connect with it. Realize that you have that ability. Nobody can take that away from you. Once you connect to the web of light, it will change you forever. I don't mean just in this lifetime. I'm talking about your soul. You know, our souls are like seeds of light in a garden of light. And so when we're connected to that web of light, it not only gives us, sustains us, but it also is what informs us. In other words, it's like we know about the web of the World Wide Web. We're using it right now to communicate, right?
Yeah.
And other things, commerce and stuff. But the truth of the matter is that's a very small, corrupt version of what exists throughout all of creation. So, and I compare it to the web of light versus the web of lies. Now, obviously, not everything on the internet is a lie, but I mean, let's be real. Most of everything on it is corrupt or distorted or perverted. And yes, we can use it for good, but it was initially designed by the Pentagon, and it's for nefarious purposes. Obviously, it's not for the liberation of mankind, but it's a double-edged deal. So we're using it right now for good, but its initial design was for ill. But it's just pales in comparison to the actual cosmic web of light. So, just like your computer can do a lot, but when you plug it into the internet and it's networked with millions or billions of other computers, now its capacity or its capabilities are just skyrocketed, right? The same is true for our souls. When we connect to the web of light, when we connect our soul consciously, make a choice to connect to the web of light, we have access to all that other information, all those other souls and their consciousness, you see? And then when we start working with them, well, it just increases our capabilities like exponentially.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at this picture, and it's phenomenal. Yeah. I've seen it, I think, a couple times, even on your YouTube channel. I was looking at it.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible visual of the way all the galaxies are kind of all run together.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, though. I can't really show you that because, it's limited. Now, you understand that is a computer-generated graphic of what really is. Yeah. And when it was shown to me, in my mind's eye, it was like, oh, my God, everything. Now, what they show in some of those, when you go into that folder, you'll see some of those things are kind of cool. And there's even like a YouTube video of scientists put it together at a very large scale. What they don't understand or what they don't want us to see yet is that everything, even down to the subatomic level, is connected by filaments or strands. Like it's a web of light, but it goes from the smallest all the way up to the largest. And just like you have on the planet, you have streams that go into rivers, that go into oceans. It's the same for this web of light. What looks like little filaments or strands in the web, it's all that is moving. All that light is moving constantly. So it's like streams of light or rivers of light moving through oceans of light, and it's always moving, and it's conducting or conveying consciousness and creativity. That's why when a barren, like we've had multiple mass extinctions on the planet, and the whole thing just comes back. Well, it's not like aliens are doing that or extraterrestrials. Although they can assist in the process, the planet will always rebound because it's part of this incredible fabric. The web of light is really, you could also say, the web of life. There's nothing would exist without that. So it's just another, like I said, everything's going to be revealed. That's a component that once we realize that that's our divine birthright. That's who we really are. That's our neighborhood, or you should say that's our environment. It's not just I live in California, or I live in the United States, or on this planet. No, I am a sovereign soul within the cosmic web of light, and even that is not the totality of creation. I should say, excuse me. One of the other things I've been studying is Walter Russell, and there's a folder there for that on my website. He says that the creator would be like an artist. He's an artist, all right, and his art is something separate. Yes, he created the art, but the art and the artist are two separate things. So he says God is like an ocean that the source is still. It's magnetic. It's pure light, and there's no distortion. And it's like the ocean. The bulk of the ocean is calm and still. Yet the surface can be like considered the creation coming from its broadcast. Sorry, I'm not saying this very well. God is still. God's creation is constantly in motion. So if you look at the ocean as an analogy.
Are you there? Did I lose you? All right, we're going to take a little break, and we're right back after this. All right, we're back on Conflict Radio. We got Robert Stanley back. I guess we got disconnected or something. Where were you, Robert? You're talking about?
Yeah, so it's really simple, but it's something I've never heard anybody else talk about except for Walter Russell. He said that God is like the depth of the ocean. It's constant. It's still. It's constant. Without movement. God's creation is like the surface of the ocean, where you constantly see waves and motion. So one is still. God is still. God's creation is constantly in motion, and that's where we are. And that's why there's this web of light that's constantly circulating. The web is not static. That's what I was trying to be clear with you about. So it's kinetic. There's constant motion in that. It's hard. It would be really hard to portray this. I haven't seen it done yet, but think of all the light that you see as like water circulating. Yeah. It flows. Yeah, it flows. The light is literally flowing.
Well, you could see it. It kind of probably wouldn't be much different than how a highway looks at night. With the headlights. Yeah,
something like that. It's similar to that, but again, the thing is so this is the big choice that we have to make. Do we want to continue being part of the web of lies, or do we want to connect to the web of light? Personally, I choose the web of light, and that's why I've been helping other people to recognize that that's even available to them. And that's actually part of our divine birthright, which to me is absolutely mind-boggling. But as I said, it doesn't stop there. Once you go beyond that, then you end up in what Gnostics call the monad, the one, the source. And that's a very, very, very high level. And it's sacred and it's divine. And that's it's beautiful, I think, in a way, but ultimately the creation is here for us to experience and to participate in, like co-create. It's like, we can create our own stuff here. And I know sometimes it seems very disturbing, but actually it's relatively safe. We are being supervised by various entities, so that we don't get too carried away. And
do you think
ultimately,
those are good entities then?
Yeah. But again, they're good in the sense that they respect our free will, but they also, like parents, they or any guardian. We talk about guardian angels a lot. The majority of people, especially in the United States, believe guardian angels are real. But what are they doing here? Right? Why would they be watching over us unless we needed some sort of assistance or supervision?
So you believe in a God then that created all of this, or?
Yeah. But here's the thing: God created all the angels, including the fallen ones, not to be evil, but ultimately they chose to go down that path and start fighting with each other. This is one of the things I was talking about yesterday with Jay and Pierre, was that okay, among the fallen angels, just like you have organized crime, right?
Uh-huh.
You know, they fight with each other, right? For they're always jockeying for positions of power. They kill each other. So they lack integrity, and morality and compassion. So they don't work well together. They don't play well with others. They're kind of stuck in that mode, and so therefore they're very limited. They're self-limited. Whereas those of us that are good and work with service to others, it's very easy for us to cooperate and collaborate with one another consciously. We do that, and it's fun, and it feels good, and that's why we do it. And so we have a much less limited potential for what we can do. It's, in other words, one is sustainable, the other one is not, for sure, right? So I'm trying to say that they really are their own worst enemies, and you can kind of see that being amplified right now with during this current political and cultural crisis that's raging. It is not just the United States. I was in Hong Kong. I left just before just went to hell with all the protests, and then next thing you know, conveniently there's a virus, and nobody's supposed to be out on the streets and stuff, and
well, a mess. It's bad for the Hong Kong protesters to be out in the street during the virus, but it's fine for for the protests here in the U.S. to be out on the street.
Well, I mean, they were doing it anyway in Hong Kong, and ultimately they were getting the tear gas or whatever those guys were spraying, and they were getting beaten and shot with rubber bullets and stuff. It was bad. I mean, I watched it. I still watch, but because I have my wife, my son, and I lived there for a little over 4 years, and we made some really wonderful friends there. So obviously, I feel horrible for them. In fact, I'm still employed by a Hong Kong company. But it's like, I can't do anything about it. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. Obviously, I can emotional support for my friends. I think remotely I've been able to have some minor influence over the protest. But ultimately, what happened? But look what happened. The Chinese government just said recently, national security. It's not an act. What was it? National security.
It's over for Hong Kong, I think.
Yeah, no, that's what they did. They just said, look, we're going to implement this new law. National security law, coming straight out of Beijing. It basically says your due process is over. You don't get that anymore under British. It was supposed to be like a 50-year transition, and they just slammed the door on it. Just like a few weeks ago when they implemented this new national security law. So they can just grab anybody anytime they want for any reason. And, it's like when I saw the secret police take over, they commandeered an entire hotel downtown, a place I was very familiar with. I didn't live in downtown, but I used to have to go there. And I was like, okay, that's it. They're game over because
So as far as the Bible's concerned, the end game where this is all going, I mean, we can't have this good versus evil battle forever waged on the planet Earth. I mean, what's the end game?
Well, as I say, it's so that the souls that are here can make a choice, a clear and proper choice as to which direction they want to proceed. And I don't think it's not for an eternity. Those who choose to continue down the path of the dark side, I think some of them at some point are going to wake up and say, "Oh my God, that was a huge mistake. Please, somebody help me. I'm sorry. I am truly sorry. I repent." And it's like, it's okay to ask for help, but you got to understand that doesn't mean that they're going to just fix everything for you, do everything for you. And it's weird. It's like, I don't know why humans have come to this point where they seem to think that somebody has to save them, that they're not responsible for their own behavior.
This is. I think this is a byproduct of giving every kid a trophy.
But that was done deliberately. I'm just saying this is how the dark side corrupts our consciousness and our morality and our internal compass. And it's like I said, it's more about soul control. They really know how to corrupt us. And so the victim mentality is real, and it's really dangerous. It's very debilitating because it's a position of weakness. Versus those of us who see ourselves as survivors. Victims versus survivors. There's a huge difference. Victims blame everyone, and they take zero responsibility. Survivors blame no one. They just, accept what has happened and become stronger from their experience, and ultimately will, usually I should say, most of us will reach out to help others that are suffering. And in so doing, we make ourselves stronger and others. And that's called reciprocity. It's also part of a process that I think you've probably heard me talk about it, but I'll mention it again for people. The big difference, the most clear and simplistic distinction I can make is that everything on the dark side is dissonance, meaning it's discord. There's no harmony. And I kind of alluded to it before, but I'm talking energetically now. Mm-hmm. Dissonance is unsustainable. Whereas resonance is sustainable. It's all about living in harmony, working together, all those good emotions of love and happiness and health and family and all that. Those are all resonant energies, and that's what the web of light is. So in order to, and this is why I've also said to people, if you want to connect to the web of light, it isn't just a matter of sitting there and meditating. It's about increasing your resonance. Some people call it a love quotient as opposed to an intelligence quotient or an IQ. The LQ is important. It's more important in many ways, I think. I know the word love means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but the truth of the matter is we can increase our resonance many different ways. But I mean, the most simple formula that I was given is to do these things. And I know you've heard me say it, but I'm going to say it again. Being calm when other people are acting crazy, like you can see right now in the streets of Portland or whatever. Being kind when others are being cruel. Being creative when others are being destructive. And most importantly, being courageous when others are scared. Now, if you can only do one of those, it's better than none. But if you can do all four of those things, you will have increased your resonance exponentially. And here's the amazing thing. The longer you do it, the easier it gets, the stronger you become. And the stronger you are, the more of an example you become to others. So it's not like you have to force people into what they call, like, well, a lot of people say, oh, I resonate with what you're saying. Well, that means that we're connected. We're resonating together on the same level of frequency or consciousness or emotion. And so it's contagious. Just like you see the riots, the hysteria. The dissonance is also contagious, but it's highly corrosive, totally destructive, and it always collapses on itself. Guaranteed, every freaking time. So again, it's a choice. It's an incredibly stark choice too. But I mean, what I've described to you is pretty straightforward, right? It's not that complicated.
Yeah. Where do you think that? Where do you think the United States is headed in all this?
Well, it's not monolithic. I mean, there's going to be, this thing with these socialists / communists, fascists, whatever. This is not new. It's happened before. When I was younger, back in the late 60s, early 70s, we had these same groups. Black Lives Matter. Back then, it was called Black Liberation Movement. Black Panther. And the Antifa, the correlation there would be, they were called the Weather Underground, mm-hmm. or the Weathermen. And in fact, a lot of those guys are still around. The Weathermen helped Obama get elected, and then he ended up putting some of them in his administration. So they're here, and they're not going to give up easily. Neither side is just going to walk away from this. But I do think, though, that ultimately there's going to be, from biblical terms, they say that the wheat from the chaff or the wheat from the tares is more accurately what it says in the Bible. And all that means is the good seed is going to be separated from the bad seed during a period of a harvest. So I do believe that that's a real process, and that we're all going to look. It's not like you can just sit there and watch it like it's a soap opera. We're all in the middle of this thing, and there's no way you can just sit around and be neutral because it's affecting everybody.
And you're gone again. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. We're with Robert Stanley. We keep losing him. We got you back now. We got you on the cell phone now.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. You're actually coming in pretty good for a cell phone call. So where were we?
I think I was talking about the choice we have to make, and ultimately that there'll be a separation because it's just not sustainable to have both sides living next to each other. Both sides meaning those who are obviously in the dark versus those of us who are working for the light. We can't keep going down this path together because every time we build something, they're going to want to tear it down. So and besides, there's a lot more that we need to experience that we cannot move forward in our growth as long as we're surrounded by or being interfered with by these fallen entities. So
I guess we're got about 15 or 20 minutes left or so, and I do want to talk to you a little bit about this secret space stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think's going on up there?
A lot, and they're not telling us much. Unfortunately, that's always such a vague term. I can tell you this much. The deep state is run by the globalists or the secret societies, and they all work for the fallen angels. So it's like this: fallen angels, then you have the hybrids in between called the Nephilim or Gregorium, and then you've got the human collaborators at the lowest rung, and they're all working together. They don't always get along with one another, and there's obviously a lot of problems. But what they've done is created an alliance. Some people call it a breakaway civilization, although I don't think of it like that. It's just a very corrupt cabal. It's a crime syndicate. And so they offered these guys on the lower level, humans, some of us were given opportunities to have access to technology that we consider to be phenomenal. But it's actually mundane. It's commonplace throughout the cosmos. And, of course, they try to weaponize it and use it to control everybody and everything secretly. And the thing is, they stole trillions of dollars in the process to build this stuff. And so they have their agenda. I don't really study it very closely, although there is, again, I know I keep saying this, but if you go to my website, unicusmagazine.com, scroll down to the very bottom there's one folder called the Space Force Files. And, the Tic Tac UFOs that the Navy has been talking about, that's our stuff. But it's only for the elite. And it's controlled by military intelligence on behalf of the deep state and or these globalists, Illuminati, and the fallen angels. So think about, so when I talk about fallen angels, people I think immediately they think, oh, you mean guys with wings and all this stuff. No, they're actually, like I was saying before, they're actually, they come in ships. So they're celestial sailors. The cosmic sea. They navigate cosmic oceans, and some of them are pirates. Straight out. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They're just evil. So and corrupt, and they're somewhat coordinated. Okay, they do, like I said, organized crime. Sometimes it's disorganized crime, but nonetheless, what they've done here on this planet is that really, it's not that hard to figure out. And you can see, if you go to that file that I'm talking about on my website, you can see for yourself. I've actually got some video footage as well as blueprints and stuff. And it's really very obvious. You just have to take the time to look and think about how this was done and why it was done.
So what do you think about the logo? I'm actually scrolling your page here. The Starfleet Command logo and the United States Space Force logo, the logos are identical.
Yeah. Well, because this is the thing about Hollywood, has always been an extension of the Pentagon. It's propaganda. In fact, during wartime, you used to be able to go in, you go to see a movie, they would have intermissions where they would do these propaganda reels from the Pentagon. That's just a small thing. They've always had their hands in production of they call it social engineering or predictive programming, and it's a way of conditioning us to certain things, like clones. You see, that was all foreshadowed. Just everything about the future is it's presented to us as fiction or entertainment, but what it really is entrainment. Meaning, it's mind control. The flicker rate, the way, how it's over time, what they've done, when you cut from one scene to the next, they've shortened the time so that there's just cut one thing after the next. And the faster they go, the deeper it goes to our so-called subconscious mind. So they've been programming us. So that's why TV programs, the programs on TV, programming us to some extent.
Did you see that movie Out of the Shadows?
I don't think so.
It's exactly about what you're talking about here, the Project Mockingbird and all of this. It's definitely worth taking a look at. It all goes back to how the CIA was working with Walt Disney to,
right?
The whole thing. The whole thing is a CIA. Is a CIA operation.
But what is the CIA? Who are they?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, it goes back to this. The OSS during World War II, Offices of Strategic Services, was merged with the SS from Germany, and that's when those two agencies came together and created the CIA. So you literally have Nazis that were brought in at the end of World War II under National Security Act, secretly under Project Paperclip, and they became part of our so-called national security, or deep state. They used to call it the shadow government, which I think is a more appropriate term because they're dealing with shadow beings behind the scenes. In other words, they're not atheists and they're not Christian. Some of them may say they are, but they're clearly not. They're typically, they worship, or they work. That word just literally means you work for. Worship means to work for. So they work for these various entities that are criminal, in my opinion, because the level of cruelty and corruption. That's just how the word evil is really it's just too vague.
Do you think that there's battles going on up there?
Absolutely. Oh, for sure there is. That's why you think stuff falls out of the sky. It's not like we could, especially back in the 40s, we couldn't be shooting that stuff down. And it wasn't just Roswell. There was a bunch of them. And they were all over the world too. So yes, absolutely. And that is just a continuation of what I told you before about the wars in heaven between these so-called angels that we now call aliens.
So how long do you think before all this starts coming out?
Well, it's been coming out for a long time. It's just that, like I said, when the Pentagon gave, New York Times, the green light to go ahead and put out this stuff about the so-called Tic Tac UFOs and Tom DeLonge and all the so-called government agency, all these people, mostly CIA, that he claimed were working for his team and all this crap. It's more smoke and mirrors. It's like, so I don't see, I guess to answer your question, I don't expect to get any kind of honest or full disclosure from any official government or religious agencies, even though I know at some level that they know exactly what's going on. They just don't want to tell us.
Yeah, but I mean, it
can't be. It really would. Excuse me. It would really it would totally upset society, because it's our culture is based on multiple layers of lies. And I mean, and you can't really blame any individual or any or institution per se, because it's the corruption comes from the top down. The fallen angels, it all goes back to that they are a organized crime syndicate, and that they do have secrets. A lot of those secrets have ultimately come out, but officially, the status quo is fundamentally a lie, multiple lies, and that's going to be the hardest part. As things start to literally fall apart, the house of cards comes down, and people start to, whether they like it or not, and they start to be seeing exactly what's really going on, what's been happening. It's going to be a shock to the system, to say the least. And some people are not going to handle it well, and they may even die of a heart attack, because it's just so shocking to them.
Yeah, but so what I'm saying is how long do you think until that hammer drops?
I don't think it'll be overnight. Since I know what you're saying now. It's a gradual process, mainly because the good guys don't want to harm us. They're trying to give us as much time as possible, but yeah, there is a date certain when, like the way it was shown to me is, by the end of 2022, everything will have been revealed. Not overnight. It's like I said, it's a 10-year period, but it's going to be increasingly difficult for people to ignore it as we move forward towards the end of 2022. And here's the thing: there's no going back. Once everything's being revealed, there's no way you can put the genie back in the bottle. It's like you can't unsee something like that. You can't stop knowing something like that unless they just did like a mind wipe, somehow create like mass amnesia on everybody.
Well, I mean, they've done it once. I mean, it's happened before. I mean, we knew about all this before on Earth, don't you think? Like, and there's been catastrophes or mass wipeouts or whatnot that make the people forget.
Yeah, and also deliberately burning books or hiding artifacts or records. Yeah, sure, they could try that. I don't think that's going to happen this time, though. I really don't. At least for those of us that wake up and choose to work with the light, that's it. I think on a soul level, even if they killed us, they're physically, our souls are already going to be so connected to the web of light, because that's where everything is anyway. That's what some people call it, Akashic records or something. But like I said, I'm just saying exactly what science calls it. The cosmic web of light is real, and you could access anything there. In other words, there's no secrets. I know down here people kind of think that that's a thing. It's like a currency. If the more secrets you can have, especially when you keep it from other people, like you supposedly gain advantage over them. That's just stupid. That's really stupid, because we're all connected anyway, and more importantly, we're all family. Everything is coming from the same source. We're all family. That's another one of the big lies that's been told here, and a lot of people believe it. Somehow we're separate because of our religion or our race, even though we're all one human race. There's all these different reasons and ways that they can justify dividing us up and keeping us conquered. But the truth is, we're all family.
Yeah, and that's the entire planet, not just certain
Oh,
religions
no, it's the whole, all of creation.
yeah.
That's what I was trying to say before. We're not just citizens of Earth. We're citizens of the cosmos. We're children of light. We're seeds of light within this incredible creation. Incredible, and it's sustainable, and it's unlimited in its capacity to grow or create. So there's no lack of anything. No one should be starving. No one should be sick. No one should be suffering. None of that stuff. It's just here in this particular very small classroom. We're being challenged with these different, what do you call this? What do you call those? Not obstacles. They're obstacles, but when you go into a classroom, they give you problems, questions. A test. We're being tested, right? And the only way you can pass the test is to solve the problems.
Yeah.
So
Boy, I'll tell
the
you,
thing is,
it's definitely interesting where we're all going. I mean, these are definitely interesting times, man. And either way you look at it, I mean, I think definitely everybody's starting to wake up to the fact that there's something's definitely going on. And there's definitely going to be a lot of stuff coming out that, like you said, is going to just shock, the majority of people. I think, especially people that have, I mean, the longer, older people, that have been programmed, their whole lives,
multiple lifetimes, and that's why, like I said, it's going to be difficult, not impossible, difficult. But graduation's always like that. You have your final exams, right? You better cram for your final exam. So, I mean, it's not funny, but it's just it's so obvious to me now. But I've been working on this since, for myself, not just myself, although it started as a very personal process back in 1985. I gradually realized that this isn't about me. We're all in this together. And so that's why I started reaching out to other people, ultimately reporting it. And I found out that the more I shared the information that I was getting, the more information was provided to me. So anybody can do that, become a conduit, and like what you're doing. And it makes a difference. It really, we can, in other words, we should be assisting each other. It's like, when you're in classrooms, you could cheat and ask somebody for the answers, but it's better to do study groups or hire a tutor or something. Mm-hmm. And other people can assist you to do a good on the test, but you can't expect them to do the test for you, because that's cheating. And ultimately it means you haven't learned anything. And you won't graduate either. I mean, not really, because in the bigger scheme of things, even though down here, people think they're getting away with cheating and stuff, throughout the cosmos, beyond this world and stuff, in reality, that doesn't work. It's a meritocracy. In other words, it's based on merit, and everybody has a permanent record of everything they've ever done. So all the choices that you make and the actions you take, all that is recorded, and that's your record. That's your merit. And you can't cheat that. You can't cheat that.
So what's the end game? The heaven, the hell, what's in it? What's in it for our souls then? You spoke of, we live multiple lives and stuff, but we're obviously trying to grow. We're trying to do better. What is, do you believe in a heaven? Do you believe in a hell? Or do you think that the bad souls are just going to be snuffed out and just evaporated, gone?
No, I hope not. I believe in divine mercy, okay? And because I've experienced that. So I think it's possible, but who knows? There's a lot of things that are still hidden from us at this point, probably for a good reason. But eventually we're going to find out if we keep evolving, as you were talking about before, not just our consciousness, but our souls. There appears to be very distinct levels of existence, not just on the physical, but within the non-physical or multidimensional realms. So our souls, They can grow, and the places. This is why I'm talking about merit. You could say, "Oh, I want to go to heaven." Yeah, well, if you're not qualified, if you haven't actually earned the right to go there and to live there, you're not going. And that's all based on your behavior and the actions that you take, the choices that you make. That's what determines where we go. It's not God judging us. It's us literally making choices that are either good or bad, and that determines where we end up. And it's not permanent. Like I said, we can change that. We can change that at any time based on, our free will. But it's a gradual thing. You can't just be in hell and one day go, I get it now, and boom, you're in heaven. It would be a gradual thing, sort of like ascending. Like if you do a deep dive in the ocean, you can't just go from the depths of the ocean to the surface. Let's just snap of your fingers. It takes time. It takes time and effort. So that's just my personal opinion on it. But yeah, it's talked about that the lower astral realm is sometimes referred to as the underworld or hell. And it is very close to this planet. And there are portals that allow some of these entities to come in here and interact with us. But that's just the lower end. The majority of creation is much higher frequency in light and love and service to others. And again, that's so they say like birds of a feather. Those of us that are seeking that and actively living that kind of a life here now will ultimately, that's where we're going to move into those higher realms and beyond. So it's pretty darn amazing, and I don't think it's really that complicated. At least I'm not like struggling with it anymore. Although sometimes I have a hard time explaining it. It seems pretty simple, straightforward.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to tell everybody where to find you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the main. I sound like a broken record. UnicusMagazine.com. It's spelled UNICUS magazine.com, and I put most everything I do up there. And you can also email me there through the website, and I do my best to answer all my email. It's sometimes a little overwhelming, but I do appreciate hearing from people, and any questions or comments you want to make, that's fine. So thank you for having me on the show, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend everybody listen to your podcast. It really is fantastic. The Unicus Radio Hour. I highly recommend it. It's great. Well, Robert, thank you very much for coming on. We'll be right back with Conflict Radio right after this. And we're back on Conflict Radio. We're just going to go ahead and wrap up our show today. Make sure to check out our website, www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Spreaker, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube as the Conflict Radio Network. Make sure you go there and subscribe, like, send us emails. We actually have a call of a listener is going to be coming onto the show. I think it's next week. He has a good story to tell. He sent me an email and kind of told me about himself and a story in an email. I thought it was really interesting, so I sent him an email back, and we're going to go ahead and get him on the show. Basically, what I'm saying is that if you have something you want to talk about, you have a story that you want to tell, definitely send me an email. It's info@conflictradio.net. That's my email address. It goes right to me. It goes right to my phone. info@conflictradio.net. Tell me what you want to talk about, and I'll shoot you an email. We'll set up a time, and we'll get you on the show to talk about it, because some of you guys have some really interesting stories that I'd like to hear. And I think everybody else would kind of like to hear too, because that's what we're about. We want to learn. The show's about learning, and we're growing, and we are evolving. Apparently, as a society, as a human race, I think we have a lot of waking up to do. I think a hammer's going to drop pretty soon, and the world's in for an entirely different ride than what we've been on. I think it's going to be quite a shock to a lot of people from from what Robert said. I completely agree with him. I think that I really agree with him. I think that we're really going to be woken up to a lot of strange and interesting things in the next couple years. So definitely stay informed. That's it for us. Until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe. You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is August 27th, 2020, and we are coming to you from the Rocket City, aka Huntsville, Alabama. Today we're going to have Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio on. He's the creator and host of Canada's Spaced Out Radio, running Monday through Friday at spacedoutradio.com. You can also catch his broadcast at youtube.com/spacedoutradio. A former radio journalist, Dave graduated with a diploma in broadcast communications from one of Canada's top broadcasting schools, BCIT, in 1998. Dave then spent nearly 10 years in radio, mostly working in sports, before leaving the field to pursue other interests. Now, we're going to talk to Dave about a lot of different things, and a lot of different things I'm curious about, so I hope you enjoy it. If you're hearing crashing and stumbling in the background, we have gotten a new little kitten named Doc Holliday, and you know how kittens are. They get in everything and knock everything over, and they're not the most graceful cats in the world. So hopefully we can keep the kitten knocking things over to a minimum during the show. So we're just going to get right to it. We'll be right back with Dave Scott right after this. Well, welcome back to Conflict Radio. We're with Dave Scott of Spaced Out Radio. Dave, how you doing?
I am good. Thank you for this opportunity to chat with you.
Man, it's a real honor to have you on. And just throwing out there for everybody, Dave already told you, but we've got quite the thunderstorm going on here as this hurricane gets closer to where I am. But I think we're going to get through it just fine. So if you hear the thunder, that's what it is. Now, Dave, I brought you on because I wanted to talk about your show. Me being a podcaster, I guess, and I've been listening to you for a long time. I know you started your show back in 2014, November 30th, 2014, I guess. Does that sound about right? What was your first show?
My first show back then when we started Spaced Out Radio, it was only a 2-hour show. I had no idea 6 weeks previous to that there was this thing called Blog Talk Radio, and there was all of these podcasts out there. When I left terrestrial radio in 2007, I walked away from radio for good. I was so disheartened by my career choice that I just had a real bad taste in my mouth about radio. And when I walked away for good. And then all of a sudden, when my own experiences started in 2011, after a few years of that going on, I was convinced by a good friend of mine, Johnny Enoch, to start Spaced Out Radio. And I'll tell you, I was so naive to how many different podcasts and radio shows out there that there actually were. You know, I mean, I've never really been an internet savvy kind of guy. And so when we started it, I really thought I was one of the only ones. Little did I know there's probably about another 5,000 to 10,000 of them out there in one form or another, whether it's Blog Talk Radio, Mixler, Spreaker, YouTube, you know, whatever it may be. And it's just one of those things where if I would have known, I probably wouldn't have started it. And probably our success that we have had in growing this to one of the top players in the field of paranormal genre is due to my naivety that we actually could get this going. So, you know, it's been a little bit blissful. It's been a little bit hard, but you know, we're almost 6 years in, and I'm just still continuing going strong.
Now, you host the show 5 days a week, but you also have weekend guests, or I guess guest hosts, don't you?
Yeah, on Sunday we have Michael W. Hall, the paranormal lawyer who does that. Saturday nights we have tried a few people in there, but as for right now, it is a quiet time because I don't have time to do it. And it's really difficult to train hosts, Ben. It really is difficult to train hosts. You have to have the right person with the right commitment, with the right genre, because with what we do on Spaced Out Radio, we're not a podcast. We are a live radio show that goes live to tape, which turns into a podcast. So it's a little bit different. It's more journalistic, and you have to find the right people in order to fill in those shoes. So there have been people in there who haven't been able to handle it. There have been people in there who just did not bring what we felt was what we wanted to represent. And finally, I just kind of got fed up because I knew that I was having to sit at times in my studio and listen to whomever the weekend host was, just to make sure there was, they were timing out properly or going to commercial properly or saying the proper things or not saying things that shouldn't be said or whatever. And, it's a tough gig. It's a very tough gig. It's a tough commitment to do a weekend show because guests are hard to find, because they want to spend their weekends ghost hunting or looking for UFOs or doing family things, and it's just a tough time slot. So we've decided to shut the Saturday down for now. But if the right person came along with the right commitment, we would definitely look at opening that up again.
Well, that's pretty awesome, man. Hopefully you find the right guy and you can get back on Saturdays. Now, you do have a studio remodel coming up, right? You want to tell everybody about that? So
we're going to be redoing the studio. One thing that we're noticing is ever since we kind of expanded our coverage onto our YouTube channel live, which is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, there's a lot of people out there who want more video type coverage. And so what we need to do, every couple of years, the studio has been sitting the same for over 2.5 years. And, technology gets a little newer. And so we're going to be upgrading everything, because once this COVID thing ends and once people start getting back to normal, whether it's in 3 months from now, whether it's in a year to 2 years from now, hopefully it's not that long, there's going to be people looking for programming. There's going to be people looking for ways to pick our show up. And one of the things, until we get to that point back again, one of the things that we need to do is we need to concentrate on YouTube and doing a lot more with our channel there. And so that's kind of why we're having to redo the entire studio, is because we have to make it more camera friendly. We have to make it more advanced, so that way we can focus on doing more television type of recording. And it looks like that's what people want. And when the public wants that, they're going to support it. And since we started going on YouTube and playing the show live on YouTube, our listener increase has increased immensely. And so it's just another genre to help make us a little bit more publicly aware to the public that we're out there and that we're a great option for people who are looking for nighttime radio. And so far it's worked. So we just got to make sure that we're sticking with the trends and doing what people are doing too. The only downfall to it is me, because I'm not that technically savvy when it comes to things like YouTube, but we'll figure it out. We always do.
Yeah, my wife and I watch you every night on the Roku device, and it's pretty awesome because, we'll be flipping through the channels or whatnot, on our television, and flipping through the different apps on the Roku, and we'll get you, we'll see that you're on, and there's nothing else on, or, our shows aren't on, or we're not, binge watching a show at that time or something, and we'll just put you on. I love watching you on YouTube because you get to have a little bit of more interaction while the breaks are going on. Even after the show is over, you'll stick around and kind of hang out, chatting with all the YouTubers, and we love that part of the show. Honestly, a lot of that.
Well, thank you.
A lot of that's more fun than the actual show itself.
Yeah, you know what? The one thing that what I try and do is try and make it an experience. Now, usually after the show, what I'm doing is I'm editing the program to send it out to a couple of our radio stations that carry our show. And, I used to end the broadcast thinking, oh, my goodness, like I'm going to be doing all of this editing here and I got to get that done. And then all of a sudden I just kind of woke up one day and I was like, Well, why do I have to kill the feed? These people want to hang out. They want to chat. Let's just go with it. It's pretty boring, in my opinion, but people love it. They stick around. I don't know why, but they just do.
It's pretty awesome. Now, I've discovered since I started hosting Conflict Radio that we have had so many different guests on and so many different topics that a lot of things that you thought were reality in my mind, my mind has been changed a lot, and I've learned so much doing my own podcast that I wanted to get you on and ask you. Now, when you went into your show, I'm sure you had a lot of beliefs and a lot of things that, you thought were true or weren't true, ancient civilizations or whatever, that sort of thing. And I wanted to ask you, how have your beliefs changed by just having your own podcast and talking to all these different people?
The biggest change that I have noticed, and this is actually a good question. I've never been asked this one. Okay, the biggest change that I have noticed is the fact that there is no end to the rabbit hole. When you jump into the rabbit hole, and this is the way I explain it to my listeners, it's like walking through a door. And then when you open that door and you walk in and you look in front of you, there's 10 more doors. And you go to that first door of those 10, you open it, and you realize there's 10 more doors behind that. So you go back, you go to the second door, there's 10 more doors behind that second door. And it just seems like every time you open a door and you think you're close to solving something or getting close to an answer, it's not there. Or you hit a dead end or a brick wall or whatever you want to call it. And it just never seems to end. It's a never-ending cycle of information. And you got to realize, people who are researching these, there's a lot of brilliant people out there researching these topics. They are just as stumped and confused as the rest of us. They just may be further ahead where they've been able to narrow it down a little bit more than, say, somebody like you or me. And that's why we bring them on as guests for radio shows, podcasts, and whatever, because we're trying to be able to learn what are they researching? How are they finding answers when I am not? And, that's probably been the most confusing part of this all for me, is just realizing that the doors never end. And every time you open a new door, you realize, well, there's 35 other doors that I've opened that I haven't even looked into yet or even scratched the surface. Which one do I go down? How much time do I spend on each one? And it's just a big ball of confusion. It's a lot of fun. I'm not going to deny that. It is a lot of fun. But, it's something that you would think at some point there would be an end result. Yet we are in the field where there are no endings. There is no end result. And sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's absolutely maddening. Sometimes you get so pissed off, you don't want to take that route anymore. And you just kind of just choose the path that's most suited to what you enjoy. And that's kind of what I do now. I love everything about this field. I love the paranormal. I love UFOs. I love cryptids, but there's a lot about this field I've learned to hate as well. And I know hate is a strong word, and I should use the word dislike, but there's a lot of stuff about this field that I find very uncomfortable, that I find unsettling, that I find, disturbing. But when I look at it, it's not so much the research end of it, it's the people involved. It's the way people cut each other down. And so, we could spend 2.5, 3 hours talking about that alone, but it's probably the amount of doors that open that is the most, or the biggest conundrum for me.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that surprised me was that I started to realize how everything is connected. It's all connected to the same thing. And I think that that's what shocked me. Like, I never thought that, ghosts and aliens could kind of fall into the same realm of possibilities, but the longer you do things and the more I talk to people, it just seems like it's all connected. It's all connected to one.
Yeah, what? I'm glad you brought that up, because that's probably one of the other things that I have noticed as well. And this is where you also see the maturity and the talent of the researchers separate themselves from what I like to call the weekend warriors, the people who are doing this on a daily basis, trying to solve the mysteries. I think of people like David Weatherly and Micah Hanks and Timothy Renner and Ross Allison and David Spinks. You know, the one thing that they have commonality with, okay, is the fact that they have really, really been open to the fact that there are ties between everything. Why does somebody have a Bigfoot encounter and a week later they've got UFOs flying over their house, you know, which they've never seen before or had that experience before? Or maybe all of a sudden, you know, they have a weird precognitive dream, and the next thing you know, they walk into a forest and there's an alien standing there. Right? I mean, these are all instances that people are having. And, you know, if more researchers took the time to realize that there seems to be this invisible string that sews everything together, imagine how much further ahead we would be in this research. It's unfathomable. Okay? You know, the possibilities are right there to grab. Now, we may not have the answers. We may not have the solutions, but I think we would be way further ahead if we paid attention to that.
Yeah, you know, another thing that I think is slowing us down is the constant infighting. You know, there's so much infighting between a lot of groups, and you know, I think that's slowing down a lot of the research too. You know, and I think it's turned into, you know, people. There are certain researchers out there that get so set in their way and their answer that they refuse to listen to any other ideas or possibilities about it. What do you think about that?
There's a lot of ego in this field. It doesn't matter whether you're podcasting, ghost hunting, UFOs, there's a lot of ego. Everybody wants to be the man or the woman or whatever they want to be. Okay, everybody wants to be the leader, the one that gets invited to the conferences, one who gets invited onto television shows. And it's unfortunate. It really is. You know, it's like my Facebook group is bigger than yours. Who cares? You know what? Here's what I always tell people, and I was talking to a good buddy of mine, Merle, about this from Paranormal Road Trippers. He comes on for Ghosts of the Great White North once a month with me. And we were talking about this the other night, and I said to him, you know, you don't see the bigger named people worried about how many followers they have on social media, worried about how many people are participating in their group, worried about whether or not they're going to get a conference call or not. You know, the real researchers in this field, okay, they don't care. And if anybody out there who's a ghost hunter or has a UFO group or whatever, please take this as God's honest truth. Your group size means nothing. Your team size means nothing. Your team rules mean nothing. Your research means nothing. Okay? Now, I know that sounds really crass and really vicious and mean, and I don't mean it that way. What I'm trying to say is when you are doing the proper research, or the people who, in my opinion, after being in this for 5.5 years, okay, and getting very close to these people and talking to them at conferences and talking to them off the air on phone calls, the one thing that they all say to me is, I don't have time for Facebook. I don't have time for Twitter. I don't have time. I'm busy writing books. I'm busy researching the UFO phenomena. I'm busy talking to people who are giving me information. Okay? That's why, you know, when you go to a conference, you know, almost every UFO conference, that's a big one, Richard Dolan is there. Richard Dolan is probably the epitome of all of this, because he doesn't have time to worry about what is happening on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Okay, he doesn't have time to worry about whether or not, you know, you believe that psychics should be used. The real researchers out there, they never have an answer, they never say no to anything, and they don't worry about the social media. Now, the people who are, well, maybe they need a little bit of drama in their life. I don't know. We try and stay away from that with what I do. But it's cutthroat. Everybody wants information. Everybody wants to be able to try and be the one who breaks a story or gets that information, or tries to hammer someone down because their thought process or their information doesn't coagulate with another person's. It's ridiculous. And for anybody to say they have the answers and they have the 100% proof, that's immediate for me to say, yeah, I really don't think that we should be talking.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of this is pointing towards a evolution of our consciousness. And I think that us as humans being nicer to each other is part of that evolution. And to be tearing down our peers probably isn't something that we should be engaged in.
Well, absolutely. And let's take the ghost hunting crowd for a minute, okay? There are some brilliant people in this field, okay? Brilliant people, okay? But you have these groups out there that are trying to get museums and bars and buildings to sign contracts that they're the only ghost team that can go in there and investigate, okay? Why are you doing this? Okay, what is the purpose of this? Nobody's going to contaminate your site, all right? It's garbage, right? And when we get out of that petty stuff, how are we supposed to find answers if we are trying to backstab one another? It doesn't work. So why are you ghost hunting? Are you ghost hunting to try and lock down locations, take over a province or a state? What are you doing? Okay, the problem is nobody in this field, I shouldn't say nobody, that's wrong. Very few in this field actually have the focus and the tenacity and the desire to actually try and find answers. I'll give you a little challenge. The next time you have somebody on here who's from a ghost hunting team, okay?
All right.
I want you to do this. Ask them what they do with the evidence. Okay, and then they'll say, well, we collect it, we go through it. Great. What do you do with it afterwards? Well, what do you mean? What do you do with your evidence afterwards? Well, we store it. Well, what are you storing it for? Because if you are conducting and I'm not a scientist, okay, but I know enough scientists in this field to understand science a little bit better than from my high school days. Okay? And the one thing that I have learned is in science, you need a conclusion. In ghost hunting, very rare do we have any team out there posing any type of conclusions. Okay? And the fact that they will do by any means necessary to get a result. Okay? So if I invite you into my house because I don't know any better, and I found you on Google and you're the team closest to me, I know nothing about you. I know nothing of whether or not you're going to stir things up in my house, make life worse. I've heard people talk about this, okay, where, yeah, I didn't know where to turn. My house was haunted. I invited this team in. They said a bunch of stuff. They stirred things up, and my house all of a sudden was worse. We started getting attacked worse than what we were before. I didn't know what to do. Ghost hunting, to me, is out of control. It's the worst of the three fields if you include UFOs and cryptids. And you know why? You don't need an education to do it. That's the hard part. You don't need an education to do it. And with the way everybody is getting television shows these days, that's what everybody has on their mind. There is no schooling for it. There is no understanding of how to ghost hunt. What do you do? What don't you do? There's been some brave souls out there who've tried to teach people, but they've all fallen flat on their face to the point where they just don't even try anymore because people don't listen. You know? So, I mean, the ghost hunting side has, to me, has become very bitter, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be working together. What is your ultimate goal? Like, for instance, if I was a ghost hunter, my ultimate goal would be this: I want to know if there's life after death. That is my goal. Why? because personally, I'm scared of dying. Okay, I don't want to die. I kind of like this planet. I like walking on my patio and seeing the surrounding of 50, 60-foot trees all around me. All right? I like watching birds fly. I like mowing my lawn. I like spending time with my family. I like doing my job. Right?
Yeah.
So for me, I know that death is inevitable. Okay? It's going to happen to each and every one of us. We don't know when, but it will happen. So wouldn't it be nice to know and to confirm that there actually is life after death? I would like to know. And I'm sure many of your listeners would like to know. But the problem that we have in the ghost hunting field is that very few are actually trying to solve any answers. And why is that? Because the majority of them are there for the thrill. They're there to get scared. They're there to prove or disprove whether or not a location is haunted. They're there to do the tourism stuff. Why? It's selfish. We have the ability to solve the biggest mystery in life's equation, and we're not even doing it. We just want somebody to go boo in front of us and scare us, or catch that orb or that shadow on video, or catch that voice, that screams at us on an EVP. Is it exciting? Oh, hell yeah, it is. It's completely exciting, right? I like the rush, but I want to know what's going on. I want to know, why are you here? Why are you still here? Is there life on the other side? What's it like where you are? Right? What do you see? What do you know? What do you get to do? Where can you travel to? Do you even know you're dead?
Yeah,
that's what
odd.
we need to be doing. That's what we need to be doing. But we become so narrow-minded that it's more fun to backstab the way teams are going. Like, I don't bring on a lot of paranormal teams on my show, and I've listened to a number of paranormal podcasts. It always comes out, well, what kind of gear do you use? Oh, you use a K2 meter? Yeah, we don't use those. We found them very untrustworthy. Who cares? If it works for somebody else, but it doesn't work for you, guess what? I play hockey. I shoot right-handed. I can't shoot left-handed. Does it mean that shooting left-handed for people doesn't work? No. Because there's many talented left-handed hockey players or left-handed baseball players out there. They're not just right-handers. But we've become accustomed to griping and bitching and moaning about absolutely everything, in the field, that there's no way we're ever going to solve anything. This is why I hang out and we do a lot more UFO stuff on Spaced Out Radio, is because at least with UFOs, it looks like we're getting closer to a conclusion. We want answers. We're getting closer to those answers. That's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. What do you think is going to happen with UFOs? You think disclosure's coming?
I don't know. I think the stronger question is whether or not mankind is ready for disclosure. There's a lot of brave people out there who will say, bring it on. Society can handle aliens. Really? Really? A sickness called COVID-19 wrapped itself around the world, and what did we do? We hoarded toilet paper. Okay, we went to the store. We tried. We went and grabbed hand sanitizer, then tried to sell it on Amazon for 800 times its value. Are we really ready for aliens?
Well, not only that, but I think once it all runs together. Once we see one thing, we'll see it all.
It could very well. But, I think that when it comes down to the whole disclosure movement in UFOs, I think the biggest argument that is out there right now is whether or not the public will be able to handle it. And how does the public handle it? Okay, will it cause an economic collapse? Will it cause mass suicides? Will it cause religion to collapse? Where are these creatures coming from? Are they coming from an interstellar area within our own solar system? Are they coming from outside our solar system? Does it include multi-dimensional beings? interdimensional beings? Are they time travelers from the future? Is that the future us? Right? There's so many questions that we don't have answers for. Okay, like I often think about, like when the show signs off, I often think about this, man. I often think about, are time travelers here? Are they walking amongst us and we don't even know?
Well,
think about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of shows you could do on examples of that.
Well, I mean, a lot of those have been debunked. But when you think about it, I often think, am I, as Dave Scott, how many different dimensions am I in? Or you? How many different dimensions are we right now doing this show? Now, that may sound crazy. It may sound hokey to a lot of people. A lot of people may be eye-rolling as I say that. But these are the questions that I have, right? Like I said right at the beginning about opening the doors. Which door is correct? Which door is a facade? Which door is a dead end? Right? And these are the questions that a lot of people want to answer or are trying to answer. Can we get there? I don't know. But getting back to the whole disclosure side, I think there's some real dangers to it right now. All right. I believe that there is a real narrative that is trying to be pushed. I don't like that narrative. I don't think that the mainstream media fully understands or comprehends how to cover this subject, because for so many years and decades they have made fun of people who have had UFO and extraterrestrial experiences, and now the media has been caught with their pants down, and they don't know how to cover the story. I often wonder, and lately, probably the last month, I have been having serious contemplation about, for years, UFO researchers have been saying, we can't trust the spooks. We can't trust the government agents, to tell us the truth about this subject. So the To the Stars Academy comes along, and they've done some fantastic work. Okay, but guess what? The majority of them are all ex-spooks and government employees. And now they're saying, trust us. We have the public's best interest in mind when it comes to UFOs. How do I trust you?
Yeah, and what is the public's best interest?
Exactly. We're already seeing the game plan. Okay, you go on any newscast who does a story about this, what do you see? You see the same three videos, the Tic Tac, the gimbal, and the Go Fast. You see either the following people: David Fravor, the pilot who intercepted the Tic Tac back in 2004. You see Luis Elizondo, the man who ran the program. You see Chris Mellon, the guy who was assistant DIA, okay, under two different presidents. You see Nick Pope, okay, former Ministry of Defense of Britain and the UFO program there. And you see Harry Reid, the former Nevada senator. Where's Richard Dolan? Where's Grant Cameron? Where's Linda Moulton Howe? Where's Melinda Leslie? Where's David Weatherly? Where's John Tenney? Where's all of these people who have spent their lifetime trying to figure out the mysteries of this subject? You know why they're not interviewed? Two reasons. Number one, the media doesn't know who they are because they've never paid attention to this subject. The mainstream media, that is. And number two, the media loves easy answers when they do not understand a story or they don't know how to cover a story. So when CNN or Fox News or the New York Times are handed Luis Elizondo or Nick Pope, okay, that's where all of a sudden we keep seeing the same people over and over again, because this certain group called the To the Stars Academy has made it easy for the mainstream media to interview these people. Okay, this is why the media hasn't gone into in-depth research and journalism, because they haven't had to. The story has already been given to them. I mean, here's a classic example. With everything that has gone on in ufology over the last couple of years, there has not been a single reporter asked about Roswell. There has not been a single reporter asked the President of the United States about the Phoenix Lights in 1997. Up here in Canada, where I am, here's the weird part. Okay, our news outlets will play the UFO story coming out of the U.S. They played the videos of Tic Tac Gimbal and Go Fast. But you know what? Not a single reporter has asked a Canadian politician about UFOs. What does Canada know? What is Canada's role? That's bad journalism. It's lazy journalism. They're not thinking. And that's the problem. We have a media who is not thinking on this subject because they've never taken it seriously. We have a group of people out there who are using the media for their own benefit to control the narrative, and a public who understands that UFOs could be real, but they don't really want to because it really takes away from Dancing with the Stars or The Voice or Major League Baseball or NFL or whatever other reality TV they're watching. And we have a UFO public who's like, damn it, just give me the answers. Tell me the aliens are here. Oh, but we're not allowed to talk aliens when it comes to UFOs. We've been told that. The narrative have said we're not allowed to use the word UFO. We have to use UAP or ATIP. This is where it's confusing. This is where we are seeing a narrative being played right in front of us, and we're doing nothing about it.
Yeah, it just seems like more and more the news media isn't really, they don't really do any research anymore. It's just the same talking points over and over and over again, and it all comes from the same source.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like if I were to do my own research on something, I might actually, have to go to something other than Fox News or CNN to, just push their talking point.
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be nice to see the old-fashioned Larry King style of roundtable? Remember back in the days when CNN was actually good broadcasting? They had Larry King on there, and he would come in and he would have a panel, and he'd have the expert on topic XYZ, and he would have the critic of XYZ, and they'd go at it on the television. And Larry, being the journalist that he was, would ask some very pointed questions. All right? To both of them. We don't get that anymore, because wouldn't you just love to see, well, it doesn't matter the media outlet, okay? Whether it's CNN, Fox, or whomever, NBC, ABC, CBS, wouldn't you love to see a Larry King-style panel show up where you have Luis Elizondo, you have Harry Reid, you have Richard Dolan, you have Grant Cameron, maybe Steve Bassett, okay, or somebody along those lines. So that way we could actually have a true point-counterpoint. I'm not saying the Seth Stoshaks of the world or the Joe Nichols, whose only job is to try and debunk everything. I mean, these are the type of people who could have aliens standing right in front of them, and they would say that they don't exist. I'm not saying that type of critical skepticism, but let's have an open debate about these topics. There's a lot of questions that have not been answered by people like Elizondo. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered to Harry Reid. Why? Because they are controlling who they talk to. They're controlling it because they don't want the hard questions. They want to be able to control the narrative. Is that a bad thing for what they're doing? No. For the public, I think it is.
Yeah, and a lot of the problem too, I think, is that that so many of these media companies are owned by the same one parent company.
I don't put as much stock into that as I do the fact that there is a lot of how can I put this? Okay, I'm going to put this in a way that I understand it, okay? I used to be a sports reporter, which means, when you're watching the sports highlights on ESPN or something along those lines, you see all the microphones that are shoved in front of an athlete's face. Okay, that's what I used to do. All right? and I had a blast doing it. Okay, but you know what? I hate soccer. I cannot stand soccer. And when my boss would send me and say, you got to cover a Vancouver Whitecaps game, or the Canadian women's soccer team is practicing in Vancouver today, I need you to go cover it. I would grate my teeth. I would throw a 3-year-old type of tantrum. But hey, that's my job. It can't always be, roses and blue skies. Not like that at all. Okay? So what would happen was I would go there. I would cover the Whitecaps game, or I would cover the soccer practice. Because I didn't want to be there, I would ask what we call softball questions. Well, you had a high-scoring game of 1-0 tonight. That you were victorious. Joe Smith, please tell us about the goal that you scored. How important was it to get this victory? How do you build a winning streak out of this? How was the team's defense tonight? Now, they're all questions that need to be asked, but you see what I'm saying about softball questions? I'm not interested in getting in depth with about, anything like that, because I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, your heart wasn't in it.
My heart wasn't in it. That's how the media is with UFOs. That's what the mainstream has to change. So what happens is, if all of a sudden I give you all the information that you need and everything that you need to study and ask and all this, and I give you all the answers, and I say, hey, don't worry about it. I got you covered, man. Guess what? It makes it easier. You don't have to do the research because somebody, like the To the Stars Academy, has already provided everything for me. I don't need to research the topic. They've already done it. They've provided it to us.
Yeah.
See the danger?
Yeah, unfortunately, that happens with pretty much every story that's going on anymore today.
Absolutely. We're more worried about, if you take television, we're more worried about what a person looks like on television than we are about their actual journalism and their journalistic integrity to bring the public the point and counterpoint to absolutely every story. The disgusting nature of it is looking at the political side. Journalism and news outlets should not choose political sides. All right? Their job is to be the eyes, ears, the police, the judge, jury, and executioner for the public. It's not to sway the public saying we're a conservative television station, so we're going to promote only conservative type and Republican type of reporting. Or we're only Democrats, so your president's an idiot, and you should listen to us because we're going to tell you how much your president is an idiot. Do you see where I'm going with that? That's not journalism. That's making people choose sides. Call it down the middle. It's disgusting. It's unfortunate that such a beautiful career has gone that way. But you know what? They haven't, as long as the ratings are there, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. So the public is at fault because the public watches it, which provides ratings, which sells commercial advertising, which makes the television company money. That's how it works.
Yeah, or we're only going to cover this story because we believe this certain thing, or we're only going to, cover that story because we believe in that, and ignore everything that we don't believe in. Oh, well, that's a conspiracy, or that's a hoax.
Absolutely.
Just because I don't believe it personally.
Absolutely. Exactly. They don't care. They don't care. It's all about emotional reaction now. What can fit in 180 words on Twitter?
How does it fix itself?
There would have to be a law mandated by the government to make journalists and journalistic outlets, whether they're television, radio, internet, newspaper, they would have to bring them in a law that shows balanced reporting on subjects. That's the only way. Because the outlets are not going to do that.
Yeah. So let's switch. Yeah, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's kind of get off of that, and I want to talk about your personal UFO experiences. I mean, you obviously believe. You're a believer, right?
Absolutely.
And I know I've done some homework on you and realized that I actually found this out earlier today when I was doing my homework on you, that you are an abductee.
I guess you could call me that.
Or you think you were. Now, let me run this story by you because this is something that has always bothered me, and it's kind of the reason why I became curious in the subject. I believe that I was abducted back in '96, and I'll give you my experience, and I'll just say it real quick because a lot of my listeners already have heard this, but you haven't, so I want to tell you, and I want to get your idea of it, and then I want to hear your story. And what happened to me was, I just went to bed like a normal person goes to bed. And I found myself, excuse me, I had to cough, so I turned the mic down for a second. I found myself I was in a it was a white it was like a white area, and I saw shadows of beings. Like they were beings, but they were shadows, and I just absolutely knew that I was in this horrible situation, and it seemed like hours and hours that I was trying to wake up. I'm in a dream. I'm dreaming this. Is what I'm thinking. I need to wake up, and I can't wake up. And when I finally did wake up, I mean, and this was a horrible experience. It wasn't any fun at all. When I finally did wake up, it was like 2 in the afternoon. I'd been sleeping for like 18 hours, and I was exhausted. I was so tired that I literally was up for a few hours and then had to go back to bed again because I was so tired from sleeping. And I believe that I was experimented on. I believe that something had happened to me that wasn't normal. I don't believe, my wife likes to say, oh, well, you were, lucid dreaming, or you were sleep paralysis, this, that, and another thing. I don't think that that was the case at all. And I heard you today talking on a show about your experience, and I couldn't help but notice it was kind of similar. And I was wondering if you could, what do you think of that? And could you also tell us your experience?
Well, I think there's a very good chance that something abnormal did happen to you. I mean, a lot of people have experienced what you claim, and you know, um, a lot of people have had really interesting things happen. A lot of people have had good things happen. A lot of people have been having absolutely nightmarish type of experiences. Personally, I would say that you had something very extraordinary happen. That just is something that the white room. I've seen the white room. My first experience was in a white room, and it's eerie. Now, I didn't see shadows or anything like that. And what I always like to say, when I was put in that white room, I heard a voice. I knew it was a male voice, and I knew that this was something that I was in some place that, to this day, do I know if I was there or if it was a dream? No. But the only thing I have that kind of confirms that I wasn't in a dream state was the fact that I had so many other following up experiences that really were uncomfortable or very curious or very much hard to understand and comprehend. So, I mean, when I look at it all, when I hear what you guys or what you have gone through, my first inclination is to say that you had a pretty extraordinary experience that really needs to be addressed. And I don't think it was a lucid dream. Now, that being said, you were asking about my own personal situation. When mine started in 2014.
Were you
Where
sleeping?
well, I went to bed, and I ended up going and having being put in that white room, and I was pretty much told that I wasn't supposed to do a lot of research, that I was supposed to that I wasn't supposed to, uh, um, you know, I was supposed to just let it happen, relax, chill out, and see where it goes, right? And then 3 weeks later, I was at a friend's house where a lot of my experiences happened. And I showed up there, and I had as I was driving there from out of town, I had a migraine pop up, and excuse me, and I realized that after a while that it wasn't really a migraine, but it was actually shapes pulsating in my head. And I was all of a sudden called outside. It was about 10 o'clock at night. Walk outside into their back field, and had a real weird feeling that something was there. And I asked if it could show me where it was. And 150 yards away from me on the ground was the same white light that lit up the entire tree line in the area. Okay, now I'm not saying this wasn't in a subdivision. This was in the backwoods on top of a mountain in the forest in behind the houses. There was only 2 houses on the street. My friend had 10 acres. Their neighbor had 6.5 acres. The neighbors were the type of people, they were elderly. They would go to bed pretty early, like before 9 o'clock. And, their backfield lit up on my command 3 times. And 5 days later, I end up going back to the farm. I meet a young lady that day named Samantha Mowat, who is a lifelong ET contactee and a very, very good friend of mine. And she 25 minutes after meeting her and I walk back into the forest, and I see at 2 o'clock in the afternoon an extraterrestrial, 10 to 12 feet tall, standing there in the forest staring back at me. I mean, it happened so quick that it was just phenomenal. And, that all of a sudden started leading to me being an abductee, because a few months later, I was taken. I woke up on the table. And I saw the 3 little gray dudes, trying to cut open the back of my scalp. And it hurt. And, and it went from absolute sheer pain and panic to absolutely feeling like it was tickling. And it was weird. I still don't understand it. And I've had other experiences like that as well. So you really try and bring it all into focus, because, look, I try and be as skeptical as I can with my own experiences. I don't want to believe everything that I believe has happened to me, but I have no proof. Now, people, when it comes to proof, will say, well, did you get any video of the alien in the forest? No. Well, why didn't you? Why didn't you pull out your phone and start videoing? Because when you have something that extraordinary happen to you, and you are trying to comprehend something that your eyes are seeing that your brain doesn't fully understand, the last thing you're like is, hey, do you mind if I grab a photo?
Yeah.
Right? You're in shock. You're in awe. It's almost like, remember the olden day horror movies where you would see people, you'd be like, just run, dude, run. But they stand there and they take it. The next thing you know, they're dead. It's like that. When you have something that extraordinary happening that is not supposed to exist, and it's happening before your very eyes, you want to soak it all in. You want to know the feeling of the temperature. You want to know, what were the trees doing? What color was this thing? How big was it? What was it doing? What was your role in this? Why you? Why was all of this thing happening? So, I mean, there's all these questions. The last thing you remember is that, oh, by the way, hold on a second here, Mr. Alien in the Forest, or Mr. Bigfoot in the Forest. I'm just going to grab my phone, and I'm going to, just grab a quick video or a quick selfie with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I need proof of this. Hold on a second. You're busy trying to comprehend exactly what's going on.
Exactly.
Do you think that the U.S. or any government, for that matter, knows for sure what's happening, or do you think that they're just as lost as everybody else?
Well, if we take the United States government, for instance, I believe there is a faction that knows exactly what is going on. exactly what is going on. And I don't believe for a second that they are as stunned by these anomalies as they lead it on to be. I also do believe that there is a faction of the government that doesn't want this to happen. They don't want to have admittance to all of this stuff that is going on because of the religious context of everything. Religion, whether we want to admit it or not, whether you're atheist or whether you're Catholic or anything in between, all right, religion plays a huge role in this. Okay, and I'm not going to sit here and bash religion. I'm not going to sit here and bash the atheists or whatever.
Well, it's a form of control.
Well, I mean, there's ways to look at that, right? Other people will say it saved my life, right? I mean, I'm not here to bash or anything along those lines. What I am here to say is, you know, that if there's a lot of people out there who believe that anything extraterrestrial is demonic because they've read it and the way they've been prophesized about it by religious leaders is that biblically speaking, anything coming out of the sky that isn't earthbound is likely of some sort of demonic or devious background. And I don't believe that for a second. Like I'm a God guy. Okay, I don't go to church, but I have a strong belief in God and everything like that. Okay, and you know, as I say to a lot of religious people when this subject comes up, I said, okay, can we agree that God is Alpha and Omega? Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, I said, great. We can agree that God made the universe and created everything. Yes, absolutely. Okay, fantastic. We've also, will you agree with me that science has proven that as of right now, the universe is infinite. We don't know where the beginning is. We don't know where the end is. We only know that there's a bunch of stuff out there that our telescopes have been able to find. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so now that we're making progress, if we know the universe is infinite, we found planets out there that actually look like Earth. Isn't it a little naive to say that we're the only life form out there?
Well, I mean, it's not only naive, but it's what's the word? It's a little, I don't know, what's the word? It's just a little selfish.
Absolutely it is.
You know,
Absolutely
like, it's all about Earth or it's all about us.
But that's what I'm saying. Okay, there's a faction of the government that believes that there is a high portion of danger out there for this, okay? There's a high portion of people who do not want this story. There's a high portion of people out there who do not want this to come to fruition for their own fears. Okay, we also have to look at it too, okay, and this is where it gets back to what I said earlier about reporters and journalists asking about Roswell, okay? We know for the last 70 years things have been covered up. That's recent history. Okay, I'm not getting into all the ancient aliens BS, you know, the pyramids were built by aliens and look at the hieroglyphics or anything, because that could be debated. We don't know what they meant. All right, but let's take the last 70 years. All right. The last 70 years shows there's a lot of evidence out there that we really, really mean that we need to figure out. There's a lot of questions out there that we need to have answers to. There's a lot of questions out there that we need to be looking into as to whether or not this is good for humankind. All right. When we start figuring that stuff out, we might get closer to finding out the answers. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right now, we're not there. Right now, we are not there whatsoever. We're more interested in trying to play the aliens are evil garbage. We're more interested in trying to play the role of you know, trying to scare people. Right? That's what we're interested in doing right now. We're not interested in moving forward and trying to understand that there is a large portion of the population, 84% of all abductees who have had experiences, who claim that they have had a positive experience. We don't want that because positivity does not sell. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's all scary, doom and gloom.
Absolutely. Fear sells. Fear creates budgets. Fear creates a lot of interesting stuff.
Are you a Star Trek fan?
I've never watched a single episode.
I always have been curious if Gene Roddenberry was perhaps offered a glimpse into the future of humanity and seen, and that's what Star Trek is, more like a what will be in the future one day, with all the different races and technology and everything.
Could very well be. Could very well be.
Do you think that there's a
interesting.
Do you think that there is a higher consciousness, human, I guess, population out there in the world that's keeping us, the minions, sort of suppressed, our consciousness suppressed on purpose?
That is a very solid question, and I don't know. I really do not know whether or not that is actually happening. I would like to think that there isn't. However, I'm not. See, this opens up the doors to the Bilderbergs, the Illuminati, and
Exactly,
all of the stuff that we know nothing about. Nothing about. And this is where the topic gets a little bit dangerous, because then you start going down the road of people like David Icke and David Wilcock and Corey Goode and Alfred Lambermont Weber, who have pushed things so far off the deep end and they have a following that will follow and preach and share on social media those same words, okay, that it gets a little scary. It totally gets a little scary in trying to figure out what is real and what is not. I don't think there's enough evidence out there to show that, that Bill Gates is the second coming of demon spawn, or that there is this entire narrative out there that is pushing towards, killing off 85% of the planet's people because the planet is not sustainable for this many people. There's not enough food. Really, my grocery store is always full as yours. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where it gets a little sticky. So is there probably some people who want to get the information out there, or to try and control things? Probably. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of ego in this world. And unfortunately, some people have through their business successes or whom they're born to, tend to feel that they're better than you, or they're better than me, or better than people in your public who are trying to because they have money, or they're in the billions, or whatever. Those people are out there. They absolutely are. But what we don't know is, are they really trying to kill off humanity? Are they really trying to do all of this stuff? That I don't know, right? I just don't know. And I'm not sure about. That's where I get confused.
Yeah. Well, you can definitely tell, though, that we are evolving as a species ourselves, with our, I mean, just with what we're able to do consciously and subconsciously, that it seems like we're evolving our consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, do we have a lot of growing up to do? Sure we do. Absolutely we do. And more people are starting to look within themselves, trying to figure out who they are. What's the meaning of all of this? And I think those questions are good. I really do. I would love to see more people do that, And the more questions we ask, eventually, because we are a curious species, eventually we may find the answers.
So you think you were chipped, right?
Yes.
What do you think the chip is doing? Do you think it's just, I mean, it just can't be a tracking device, right? I mean, do you think it's affecting how you think?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think for many people who have been chipped by extraterrestrials, I believe that They are some sort of tracker, much like a GPS type tracker, except it's a little bit more advanced than that. It probably fills you in on telling whatever it is that grabbed you that you're sitting there. How can I put this? That you're almost like they can read your thoughts, your mind, your inhibitions, your absolutely everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I mean, this is where the studies of Dr. Roger Lear, when he would take these implants out, I mean, there was films of this where he would cut a person open to try and get this implant out. The implant would be moving to try and dodge from being removed. Like, what causes that? How does that happen? Is that our technology or is it someone else's? So, I mean, there's a lot of real interesting stuff that goes along with that.
Yeah, I actually believe I was chipped too back in '96, and you could tell. I mean, and if you've been chipped too, you know what I mean. You can tell it when it moves around. You could feel it almost moving around in your body by itself.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, it's over. This is
A
where
lot
it
of
is
people
today,
experience that.
and the next day, oh well, I know it's over here today. It'll actually move around, and I was taken again after that incident. I guess it was about 20 years after, and I know that one was removed. I don't know if they put in an upgrade or maybe they put in a different one. I have no idea. I haven't felt it since, but I know that one was actually taken out. They actually went back and took that one out. So, as weird as that sounds.
It's very interesting. And like I said, I don't know where it's going, what it's all about. The main thing is it's happening. We know it's happening. And we need to be able to, figure it out.
All right. So let's change subjects again because there's something else I want to talk to you about, and we're kind of running out of time. I guess we got about 20 minutes left or so. I heard you on an interview talking about seeing the angel of death in your mother's eyes, and they never followed up with you on that. So I'm going to. Could you tell us this story?
Sure. So my happily boring life ended on December 13th, 2011. And during that night, what we were doing was we were having a early Christmas dinner and family get-together for my daughter, who was going away with her maternal grandparents on a Caribbean cruise that would have taken her away from home for Christmas and New Year's. And so we decided, instead of waiting until at the new year to have the celebration, we figured, you know what, we're done our Christmas shopping. Let's just bring the family over. Let's get her to hang out with the family. So we had about 25 people in our house that night. There was a Canucks game on television, and we had the dinner. She opened up all her presents and had a really good time. And so at about 7:45, I start cleaning up, my better half is, in the kitchen with her mom and my mom, and they're all doing dishes, and I'm kind of bringing dishes in and glasses in from the dining room and the living room, and my parents then announced that they were going to get going because Lord knows my parents cannot miss a night of Dancing with the Stars on television. As funny as that sounds, completely true. And so I put the glasses and the dishes that were in my hands, I put them on the dining room table, and then I was about to walk through the doorway that led to my kitchen where everybody was, because my kitchen was kind of into my television area, and that's where everybody had gathered watching the Canucks game and hanging on out. And so as I started to walk through that door where my mom was on the other side, I take a step over the line from the doorway from the dining room to my kitchen. And I realize that the sound on the TV is quiet. Everybody is stopped. And I look at my mom, and I have my arms open like I'm about to invite her in for a hug. And I look in her beautiful blue eyes and realize that her eyes are no longer blue. They are jet black with her pupils being white. And I just kind of stood there and looked, and I just was kind of shocked at what I was seeing, kind of like, am I really seeing this? And then all of a sudden my mother got this look on her face that was kind of like, oh, you see me. And then she shook her head. Her eyes came back blue. The sound on the television started. I could hear people talking again. And in the meantime, I was sick to my stomach, effective immediately, and I just wanted to cry. And so I walked really weirdly down to the hallway to our master bedroom. My better half follows, and she goes, "Is everything okay?" And I just knew, and I said, "I think I just saw the angel of death in my mother's eyes." And I'm almost crying and in tears here because I'm not ready to lose my mom. I don't think anybody ever is. And long story short, I gathered my composure. I walked to the front door, give my mom and dad a hug, walk them out, and was just kind of like, this is so weird. Like, I'm not getting this. Is this the last time I'm going to see my mother? Like, I really didn't know. And anyways, it continued on from there, where later that night, after everybody had left, I walked into the kitchen, and my better half says to me, what do you think it was you saw? And I'm like, I have no idea. No idea. She goes, well, let's go into the living room and just kind of, because she was into all this, meditation and stuff that I thought was complete BS at that time. She goes, let's just go into the living room and relax. And I said, okay. So she sits on the couch. I sit across from her on the love seat. There's a table in between, and she lights a couple of white candles. And she's like, why don't you just relax and tell me what you saw? So I did that. And next thing I know, I am channeling the angel of death. And the angel of death says I was not supposed to see him, but because I did, he felt he owed me an explanation. He told me that my mother, who is a 2-time cancer survivor, was in fact very, very ill, and that if we as a family did not start treating my mother with more love and respect, that he was going to take her home. He did not say heaven. He did not say hell. He just said, take her home. And I asked him, through me, how do I keep my mother alive? And he told me. And basically what he said was, you need to show more love. Call your mother, because I've never been a mama's boy. I've always been a daddy's boy. Even to this day, I'm a daddy's boy. I'm 47 years old, and my dad is my hero. My mom, I love my mom to pieces, but I'm a daddy's boy, not a mama's boy. Mm-hmm. And, I think as children, we all favored one parent over the other. And it sucks, but we do that. And so I immediately got on the phone. The angel of death told me, over the next few days, call my sisters, tell everybody what happened. So I did. I talked to my sisters. I talked to my grandmother. I did not talk to my dad about it because my dad is a real five senses kind of guy. And he would just, kind of be like, oh, whatever, you did not. I'd be like, Dad, why do you think I'm telling you this? I don't believe in that crap. Don't talk to me about that crap. Well, whatever. Okay. I don't have time to be made fun of either. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I ended up, telling who I felt I could trust and who I could talk to. And that's what I did. And so as I went forward on that, I realized that, I think I had done enough, but now, 9 years later, my mother is still alive. My mother would have never been able, I think my mother may not have ever met my son if I didn't follow through on this. And it all seemed to work out. Right? But it was weird because that was the precursor to a lot of different things happening. That was the precursor to a lot of different how can I put this? A lot of different scenarios that I'd never experienced in my life. Like all of a sudden, within a couple of days, our house became haunted. We started, hearing people walking up and down our stairs, and our girls started seeing things that, that weren't supposed to be there, but now they were. And it just got weird. Okay. It got really, really weird. And so that's what kind of kicked everything off. And then the more I started to look into it, a few months later, I met a gentleman named Pascal, who is a real hero of mine and a real mentor of mine. I met him, and he ended up really saying to me, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And so I said, well, we might as well go the full way. We're here already. And he's like, okay, are you sure? And I said, yeah, let's do it. Well, we did it. And it got a little ridiculous, right? Yeah. It got a little ridiculous because all of a sudden I'm communicating, I'm channeling, I'm learning about all of this. And the more it happened, he'd be like, okay, well, what do you want to happen now? And I'd be like, well, I got this really weird feeling that in the next couple of months, I'm going to see Bigfoot. He goes, okay, which month? I said, July. Well, it didn't happen in July. It happened in September. Okay, so, I mean, it just seemed to open up a lot of stuff that wasn't there before. And I don't know why I was chosen. I don't know why this happened. I don't know why it put me on this journey. It has not been a fun or easy journey to go on. And for anybody who has not experienced anything out there, it's difficult, okay? You lose people that you care about because all of a sudden your closest friends in the world that you thought were, would be with you through thick and thin, all of a sudden they don't want to hang out with you anymore because guess what? You're the weird one. You believe in aliens. You believe in ghosts. You're saying you're talking to ghosts and all of this kind of stuff, right? And I lost a lot of friends that way. I really did. And it's been very tough. And this is why I said, like getting back to what I said right at the beginning of the show, I'm not sure that if I wasn't as naive as I thought, as I knowing now how naive I was when I started Spaced Out Radio, I don't know if I would do this again. I really don't. There's been a lot of heartache. There's been a lot of heartbreak. I've lost a lot of friendships. I've lost a lot of people that I trusted. And when I talk to other experiencers as well who've gone through this, they will say the exact same thing, that they haven't had a lot of fun. This hasn't been fun. It's been hard on them on a personal level. It's been hard on them on a spiritual level. Relationships that have always been there are now gone, right? And how do you recover from that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You don't. When your best friend of decades tells you to F off and hit the road and never talk to them again, what do? You love the person because they've always been there, but now you gotta go on and just respect what they want. You don't want to cause that argument. You don't want to cause that issue. You know what I'm saying? You're tired of pain. You're tired of, well, if you don't fit into my world, or if I'm disappointing you, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, you gotta live your life, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it really sucks.
So were you a religious person growing up?
Only to the game of hockey.
So
my mother grew up in a very religious household, extreme religion. My father grew up as an altar boy in the church, but as they both grew away from the church, and we never went to church as kids, ever.
Right. So how does your realization of everything going on affected the way you think about, religion?
I have been able to draw a real strong line between religion and my spirituality.
Yeah. Well, when I say yeah,
As I said, I am a very big believer in God. Okay, that's just for me. I don't preach that upon anybody. I am a believer in Jesus. Okay, because it makes sense to me. Okay, it's not that I want to believe or that I need to believe or have to believe. It's just what I feel is right for me. Now, that being said, okay, there's a huge difference between religion, which is man-made, and something of a spiritual sense. Okay, I get more, like, when I walk into a church being empathic, I get more beat up by going to a church than I do walking into the forest and having my time where I could say, hey, God, thank you so much for this. Look where I am. I'm standing in front of a 90-foot tree that's probably 200 years old. Okay, I'm standing here in this beautiful creation of yours you call a forest, and there's a stream running through. I get more spiritual enlightenment out of that than I do hearing somebody tell me that I'm everything I do, I'm going to hell. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I mean, they don't know you.
They don't know me exactly.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I believe that there is something out there. Is it this religion? Is it that religion? I honestly think that they're all wrong and that I'm right.
Huh, but you see, that's the beautiful part about it. We
Yeah,
don't need, I don't know if you're right. I don't know if I'm right.
yeah,
We'll all find out in the end. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. And it all comes down to our heart. What we are on the inside.
Absolutely.
The only person that really knows who we are ourselves. You know,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
maybe when it all comes down to it, the person that judges us is us.
I don't know.
You
That's
know,
pretty
I mean,
deep. It's pretty deep.
there's no telling. You believe in reincarnation, Dave?
I think so. I think I'm leaning that way.
Yeah, it's
I didn't for the longest time, but there's a lot of weird stories out there that have changed my opinion on that.
and that's another one of those beliefs that you change just from having a podcast
Exactly.
or a show. I don't mean to call your show a podcast.
No, that actually happened beforehand. My daughter, who is 21, she grew up with a young girl, and they were best friends starting in kindergarten. And her mom was telling me stories about how her daughter, from the time that she could speak, kept on talking about a ship and would cry about the ship broke, and it ended up being the Titanic. And to the point where the young girl said, my name used to be so and so. I forget the name now. And when they went to Las Vegas to actually look at the Titanic exhibit, imagine their surprise when the lady's name is on the list of people who died.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Right?
Now, what about any past? Have you had any recollection of any past lives that you know of?
No. No. I mean, I've had glimpses, but nothing that I would call confirming that makes me say, yes, I was a fighter pilot in World War II or something along those lines. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, one of the hardest things I remember doing as a kid, and I remember how old I was. I guess I can't say I remember how old I was. I know how old I was now looking back because I know the years that we lived in this house. I was between this age and this age. So I know that, right around the time I was 2, 3 years old, I'd be laying in my bed and, getting ready to fall asleep, and I would hear, like, almost creating vibrations and headaches in my head, the sound of marching, like troops marching. So it just
Yeah.
seemed to me like I was a troop. I was, who knows for what, or, for what country, or, in what army, but I just remember just being scared to death, like oh my god, like not here again. You know, I don't want to go back here again. And I, just hear marching, in my head, and that always freaked me out a little bit. And then you start getting people on the show, that talk about reincarnation, and you're like, wow, maybe that's what I was having. Maybe that
I,
was my issue.
the ones that I really believe are the stories of children, because children are the most honest people out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And so when I hear stories of children saying that, and there's a number of them you can find on YouTube or wherever, when you hear stories of these young children who are recalling. I mean, there's a number of stories out of India and Pakistan about where their religions believe heavily on reincarnation. You learn these stories about these children who claim to be murdered, and they have these weird birthmarks right where they were killed, whether it's a birthmark on their head or their torso or wherever. And the next thing you know, they're able to identify their killer. And people have been arrested over that. I mean, there's been killers over there that have been so freaked out by this that they've actually admitted, yes, I did kill this person, right? How does that child know? Especially if they haven't been exposed to the story. How do they know? Like my friend's daughter, she never exposed her to the Titanic until she started putting two and two together. Like, what is going on here? Why is my daughter at 2-3 years old talking about drowning and how cold the water was and watching a ship break at night? She should know that.
yeah. Those are definitely strange stories. Now, look, before we wrap up, I want to run a date by you, and I want you
Sure.
to tell us the first thing that pops into your head, and when I tell you a date. All right, you ready?
Sure.
December 13th, 2011.
Oh, yes. The angel of death. I will never forget that date. Ever.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm glad we were able to get that story out. You want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our YouTube channel, if you want to subscribe, is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We're one of the only big name shows out there that keeps all of our podcasts for free. All right. And all of our archives are free. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We're all over Facebook as well under Spaced Out Radio. So check us on out, and we always welcome new people in. We'd love to have everybody join us.
It's always a good time listening to your show, man. We really appreciate you coming on.
Really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you.
Of course. And, anything comes up, about things that you're doing or any changes in what's going on, we'd love to have you back in the future.
Absolutely. Keep me in touch, man. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. That's Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. That was Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. I hope everybody can go over and check out his show. He's a fascinating person to talk to. Absolutely enjoyed our time speaking. Remember to like and subscribe to Conflict Radio Network on YouTube. You can also follow us on Spreaker or Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, podcasts, and all of the normal podcast catchers. Be sure to check out our website, www.conflictradio.net. It's always a lot of fascinating things up there you can check out. You can always bookmark the site and check it often for our latest shows and what we've got going on as far as different things that you may find of interest. So be sure to check it out. We got a lot of neat things up there, and it's growing and growing every day. Well, that's going to about do it for us. We got through the show. There was a little bit of thunder in the beginning. I hope everybody heard it. It's always a great addition to the show when you can add a little thunder in the background. I guess we'll find out. later on when I listen to the interview. I actually listened to it on YouTube from my Roku later on. It seems like doing the show and listening to the show are two totally different things. I'm sure Dave can attest to that. So, until Tuesday, I hope everybody battens down the hatches and stays safe. You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is September 24th, 2020, and today's guest is Preston Dennett. Preston began investigating UFOs and the paranormal in 1986 when he discovered that his family, friends, and coworkers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, he has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and investigated a wide variety of paranormal phenomena. He is a field investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of 26 books and more than 100 articles on UFOs and the paranormal. Several of his books have been Amazon UFO bestsellers. His articles have appeared in Paranormal Magazine, UFO Magazine, and others. His writing has been translated into several different languages, including German, French, Portuguese, Russian, and Icelandic. And he's going to be joining us today. He's got a new book, UFOs at the Drive-In, and I'm really interested to hear some of these drive-in stories, especially now that there seems to be a resurgence in drive-in movie theaters making a comeback across the U.S. So without further ado, we're going to be right back on Conflict Radio with Preston Dennett. And welcome back to Conflict Radio. We're with Preston Dennett today. He's rejoining us. He was last with us, I guess it was been a few months ago. He's back again. Preston, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Man, yeah. We're thrilled to have you on. I think the last time we had you on was just pretty much the start of this whole lockdown thing and everything that we had going on. Do you get through all that okay?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So far, so good. You know, it hasn't been easy. I don't think it's been easy for anybody. But yeah, what a year, man.
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's not over yet either. I mean, they're starting to say we could see, 20-foot snowstorm come through. I wouldn't doubt it at all. So your new book, UFOs at the Drive-In, sounds fascinating, and especially in these times where drive-ins and drive-in theaters seem to be making a comeback. It seems to be a really interesting topic. How did you get into the topic, and how did you get into the idea of this book?
Yeah, it's very weird. I've been doing UFO research for decades, literally. Let's see, it's 1986 I got involved. So I've, heard quite a few UFO stories, I guess you could say. And one that was very early on was actually a drive-in UFO encounter. This lady came to the office where I worked. She was a new employee, Claudia, and a really nice lady. She found out I was a UFO researcher, and she's like, wow, this happened to me when I was a kid. She went to tell me this amazing story. She was at the Paramount Drive-In Theater. This is 1972 in Paramount, California, Southern California. She's with her parents and her sister, and suddenly she hears people screaming, and they're running away. They're dropping their popcorn. She looks out at her parents, and they're just kind of staring dumbly to the right of the screen. She looks out. This is a pretty large drive-in movie theater. Right next to the screen, below the actual top of the screen itself, is a flying saucer. Typical, that's how she described it, with little colored lights around it. It was shiny silver like a spoon, she says, making a sort of soft whooshing noise. And just sitting there watching them watch the movie is kind of what she felt.
So it was below the screen?
Yeah, I mean, the top of the screen is like, 100, 120 feet high?
Yeah, I actually haven't been to a drive-in theater. I don't have any idea.
Oh, really?
So it was like enjoying the movie right along with everybody else. I wonder if it was able to listen to the little calling thing that you put in your car.
Yeah, the little speakers. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird case, and I kind of thought it was a one-off. I've never heard of anything quite like it. I'm like, what happened? She doesn't really remember what happened. which I thought was kind of interesting and weird. It was years later, actually, that she's listening to the radio with her mom. They're in the kitchen, and some guy comes on, and he's, it's a call-in radio show, and he starts to describe how he was at the Paramount Drive-In, in 1972, and this object comes down, and he starts describing exactly what they saw. And they turn to each other like, oh my God, that's us. And her mom's like, yeah, I remember that. And Claudia said, well, why didn't we talk about it? What happened? We never talked about that. And you'd think you would.
Yeah.
But that's a thing that turns up in these encounters. That's how it all kind of started. And I didn't think much of it until I was writing other books, like UFOs over California and various states, and hit the state of Colorado at some point. And I'm like, wow, here's another drive-in theater encounter. And I'm going through like MUFON and New Fork and some of these databases, and I found 3 in a row. I'm like, oh, that's weird. They are coming down right next to the theaters in these cases. I wonder if this is a thing. And so I decided to dig deep and really go through everything I've got. And, I didn't find almost anything in the books, the popular books on the subject.
Yeah.
There was 1 or 2 accounts, but I hit the newspapers, the archived newspaper reports, and that's when they started to flood in. I'm like, oh my God, this is definitely a thing.
Yeah, it seems really interesting. And now, if I was in a spaceship, say, and I was visiting another planet, and I was just kind of flying around in the sky or whatever in my little spaceship, and I saw a giant screen with a movie going on, I'd probably stop to watch it too. It makes a lot of sense, really.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my theories. Is because how is this happening? Why is this happening? And if you look at drive-in movie theaters from above, an aerial photo, you can see these things from, outer space practically. I'm sure they can.
Yeah, with their little magnification.
Right, but they make a very striking footprint. It looks almost like airports, kind of. You can, and with all these cars lined up and this giant screen playing images, when people go on board a UFO, this is kind of a link to this, I think, is people they describe screens, computer screens with images on them. That's not unusual. And so I think the ETs are automatically drawn to that.
Yeah, they gotta love watching our movies, I guess. You think they would be able to intercept our television signals, and be able to watch it without having to come down. But I guess, there's quite nothing like going to a drive-in, I guess. Like I said, I've never been.
I'm really wondering who's piloting these UFOs because of the way they're behaving in some of these cases. These are not normal, flybys. It's not like you're out at a drive-in late at night and you see a UFO fly by, right?
Yeah.
Because there are a bunch of cases like that. I'm going to say almost 20% of the cases I found are your lucky chance, random flyby. But in most of these, it's really weird. These objects, yeah, they see it from above, I'm thinking. It's very obvious. But then they come down. Why are they coming down to the level of the screen? In case after case, they come right down over the screen or right next to it. This is like showing off, or over the parking lot, but usually right next to the screen.
Are there any reports of them actually coming out of the craft and like mingling around, or they just kind of stay inside?
Stay inside. There's a couple of humanoid reports, but mostly no. These things just come down and, well, the first thing that's different about them is they're very low-level reports. Second, they stay a long time. Some of these cases go on for many minutes, 15, half hour, 45 minutes. And another really weird thing about them is they're not just sitting there. They put on a show. They will start dancing around like they know we're looking for entertainment. It's the weirdest thing.
So are they all kind of the same craft, or what kind of different crafts have been seen?
It's very interesting. They're mostly your classic flying saucer.
Just like the disc shape?
Yeah, we do get different shapes, no doubt about it. But let's remember, drive-in movie theaters, their heyday was really the 40s, 50s, really the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And
Yeah,
that's
well,
when,
they're coming back, right?
yeah, I have modern cases. Definitely, I do have modern cases. The earliest one I could find, it's really interesting because there's no other cases out there where objects are coming down and showing themselves over a large group of people, like 200, 300. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess
Uh,
that goes to show you that they must not be too interested in football or baseball, because
That's exactly what I was thinking. And I was looking at all these. There are a couple of cases of UFOs over sporting events and concerts, but only a couple that I could find. I didn't dig as deep as I did for this one, but the only other thing I could find that's even close would be schoolyard encounters, and which is another book I wrote where UFOs hover over schoolyards and show themselves off to large groups of children. And that's what they're doing here. And the earliest case I found coincides exactly, pretty much, with the whole schoolyard phenomena. The earliest one that I could find with the drive-ins was July 22nd, 1950. This is at the Starlight Drive-In in Spartanburg, North Carolina. And this guy's there with his wife. His name is Vernon Gwynn. He's a journalist, so a pretty good witness. And I think that's why this case got well known, because he's a journalist. I mean, not well known, but reported.
yeah.
And what happened is they're at the theater, and this cloud-like object sort of drifts by, and they're looking at it, and it's clearly abnormal because it's just moving strange, and it looks strange, and goes by, and then it comes back. And this time they're like, okay, this is definitely not a cloud. And they're trying to see a shape inside of it, and it comes back a third time. And when it came back a fourth time, it was lower, and they could see it more clearly. It was a rounded, silvery white object, very large, very low. Other people next to them saw it. They pointed it out. And so he reports it. He's a journalist. He's going to report it to the Air Force. And this gets sent up through Blue Book channels, Project Blue Book, or its predecessor. And it goes straight to the top. This is really interesting. It's sent directly to Colonel John Meads, who is at that time the commanding general of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. So Wright-Patterson is where we study all foreign technology. That's UFO Central. This tells me they're very interested in cases like these. And, well, not only that they're interested,
Well,
they
it
know
used to
about
be
them.
it used to be Area 51, but then they moved everything over to Wright-Patterson, right?
It's always been Area 51. It's still Area 51. You can't go in there. They're still doing stuff there. It's neck deep all across the U.S. Wright-Patterson has been it from the beginning. There's certain areas that have always been locations where this is being done, reverse engineering. And Area 51 is for sure from the beginning. Edwards Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson, and a number of other bases across the U.S. have been implicated for sure.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the theaters, I don't quite want to shy off of there just yet. We probably will later, but I want to kind of stick to your book for now. Now, the theater encounters, is it always when there's a movie playing, or do people working there see them when there's nothing playing?
No. There's one case where it was a daytime encounter and something was hovering right over the screen that wasn't playing. But no, it's usually, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that. It's usually when the movie's just beginning. Sometimes during an intermission, sometimes during the most exciting part, sometimes random. But there's enough cases that it seems to be a pattern where it comes right when the movie is starting.
Now, do they leave before the movie's over, or do they stay for the whole thing?
I looked into that. I looked into what type of movie is. Well, I'm like, well, maybe they're drawn to UFO movies or something.
Yeah.
And it was across the board in terms of movie. There was Exorcist was one, Jurassic Park, The Simpsons movie, King Kong, Last Tango in Paris, James Bond. Most people do not remember the movie. It's very unusual if a person remembers the movie, and they only remember the movie because they remember the sighting that well. But most always remember the sighting. And no, I don't think they're coming to watch the movie.
Has there been any recent sightings now that the drive-ins have kind of made a comeback?
Yep. I do have recent sightings. They're not, super great like some of the early ones, because it started out, the 50s was the pre-show. 60s, it started to ramp up. The 70s and 80s, man, oh man. I mean, wait till we get into a few of these encounters, because, you've never heard anything like it. But I have, 2017, there was a case in Fish Creek, Wisconsin. UFO stops and does this right turn right over the theater. It's a short case, but some of these earlier ones, man, oh man.
Well, can you tell us one?
I would love to, yeah.
Okay.
Because I have like 10 or 20 favorites, so...
All right. Go ahead, pick one.
Here's a good one. It's an early one. I like this one because it's got some interesting aspects to it. The Terrace Drive-In Theater in Bakersfield, California, August 12th, 1952. Space for 650 cars. Not completely full. Witnesses don't really comment on that. But the main witness in this case is Lieutenant Jenkins, who was at the theater. A lot of the early cases involved military witnesses, because I think that's who reporters listened to or trusted rather than ordinary citizens. And 1952, this is still early on. UFOs really came in large numbers in the 1947.
Yeah.
So this is kind of unprecedented, and people were freaking out in the 50s to try to figure out what's going on. And so here's this case, Terrace Drive in Bakersfield, California. And Lieutenant Jenkins is watching the movie when this object drops down out of the sky. There was no real warning. And it parks right over the screen, literally right over it. Turns on its lights. It's kind of this dirigible shape. A bunch of yellow lights. It's really hard to see. It's got, except because of its lights. But the surface of it is kind of murky. And it takes off like a bullet. And by this point, although it was only there for moments, every single person saw it in the theater. There was no mistaking it. They all got out of their cars. They were completely freaking out. So he runs to the phone and calls the local sheriff, Sheriff Leroy Hatfield, and submits a report. And so the sheriff hangs up the phone and starts ringing again. It's another witness. And after it rang 3 or 4 times, he's like, all right, I'm coming down. Stay there. I'll be right there. So he comes to the theater and starts interviewing witnesses. And there's 100 people there ready to give, their testimony. He takes the testimony of about 20 people, and he's like, that's it. I'm not taking any more. My arm's too tired. And he's got all the information he needs. This object came very low, according to all the reports. And so he writes up this whole report about what happened. And here's where it gets really interesting. He sends it off to the Air Force, the local Air Force base, which turned out to be Edwards Air Force Base. And they were very interested. It was routed right up to Blue Book and beyond, actually. Blue Book itself. It was marked action, and by the next day, within hours after this happened, a report was sent to the Air Technical Intelligence Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's interesting because the ATIC, handled the most sensitive of UFO cases, that, ones that affected national security. And it went, it not only went there, but it went to Ent Air Force Base in Colorado, and that's where we track incoming and outgoing aircraft. And get this, to the Director of Intelligence at Washington, D.C.
Huh.
So, right? And they're obviously very interested in this kind of thing.
So did they interview all 100 of the witnesses, or did they just interview a few?
Just 20 or so. The military never interviewed anybody. They just took the report and were very interested in it. For a UFO report to go to the top like that shows that despite their denials, at this time they were like, nope, UFOs aren't real. What are you talking about? You're on drugs.
Yeah.
They knew it was real.
So are there certain movie theaters or drive-in theaters that are visited more than others?
Yeah, that has happened. The Yuma Drive-In Theater in Arizona was visited really dramatically a couple of times in 1947 and again in 1970s. There was a case up in Canada. I forget the name of the theater, but this theater was visited so many times that the owners actually put on their advertisement, "Come to the drive-in to see the UFOs." So they were putting on repeat performances. This is what makes me think it's intentional behavior. Actually, the case that did it, I'm like, all right, because I'm looking at these cases, I'm like, what are they doing here? Are they just coming to check it out, or are they putting on a show? Do they have an agenda of publicizing their presence? And I'm going to say yes, because there's a number of cases that are just extra. I mean, they're beyond. And here's one of them, Wellington Circle Twin, Medford, Massachusetts, May 1963. This is investigated by George Fawcett, a very reputable researcher. And a bunch of people were just watching a drive-in movie, all parked there, eating their popcorn or whatnot, when two glowing discs come swooping down. They're not next to the screen. They're kind of next to the parking lot and pretty low and just hovering there when suddenly two more come down. The original two rise up a little bit and two more come right below. So two kind of columns. And then two more come. So now there's 6 UFOs. And a couple of seconds later, 2 more arrive. And now there's 8 UFOs, a fleet, in 2 columns. And they sit there for just a few seconds when they start doing this display. These, like playing musical chairs almost. They start rotating around each other and creating circles and this sort of thing. It's a clear, sort of like a dance, is how the witnesses described it. And this went on for 45 full minutes until they suddenly took off.
So has there been any kind of cover-up by the military to try to make these stories go away back then?
I think so. We don't have great evidence of it, but there are a couple of cases that do speak to that. Well, here's one of my favorite cases, and that had a kind of interesting denouement in that direction, because this occurred in South Hutchinson, Kansas, at the South Hutch Theater. Witness is Pat Mitchell. This is about the summer of 1966. He's not exactly sure. He does remember they were watching a James Bond movie. He was a young man there with his friend. And I found this theater. The screen is about 52 feet wide, 120 feet high. It's a pretty big screen for that area at that time. And they got there early. They parked in the center, put up their little speaker, and we're watching the movie. It was in a really exciting part when suddenly they see this white light approaching off in the distance, but directly above the screen, exactly in their eye line. I mean, you couldn't miss it. And this thing, they're like, "Do you see that?" And we're like, yeah, I see it. And pretty soon it was obvious everyone was seeing it because they were getting out of their cars. This thing got closer and closer. Not super fast. It kind of just leisurely approached and parks right next to the theater, just like the Paramount case, below the level of the screen itself, to the exact right, feet away from the screen. And it was huge. It was a huge flying saucer, metallic. There were no portholes that he noticed, but there were colored lights. He thinks they were multicolored, red, blue, yellow, orange, green, but really pretty. And it sat there for a good 5 minutes. There was no panic. No one's freaking out. They're just staring at it completely, amazed and in awe. And after about 5 minutes, this thing moves behind the screen. Pat's like, it couldn't have been more than 10 feet away from the screen. It was completely obscured by the screen for just a second, and it comes out to the left side and rises up just a little bit. It's still like maybe 100 feet high now. And just hovering there for a good 5 minutes. And as if to make sure everyone's watching it or round people up, I don't know, it makes one complete rotation around the theater until it hits the road, and then starts heading down the road, right over the road, exactly, at about 20 miles an hour.
Well, like a foot over the road, like 5 feet over the road, did they say?
No, it was a couple of 100 feet.
Oh, okay.
Not like right on the road, but like right over it.
So you said he didn't see any portholes. If the UFO doesn't have portholes, how do you think that they're viewing outside of the craft? I guess like with cameras or whatever set up, you think? Or
I think their technology allows them to do that. I mean, we know this from having talked to people who've been taken on board. If you want to look outside, all you have to do is look, and the wall or window, I guess, becomes transparent.
has there ever been any reports where there were portholes where they could see people inside the craft?
Yeah, I'll tell you one of those. But let me finish this one
All right.
because it's not over yet. So this is the South Hutch case. This UFO starts heading down the road, and of course everyone forgets the movie, which is still playing, and take off for this thing. And
So they're following it.
Right. Pat's like probably about 20 cars got ahead of him, and maybe 20 after him. But pretty much cleared out the theater, which it does in a bunch of these cases. And they follow this thing for 6 miles down the road until it stops right off to the side of the road. It's a little bit higher up now, maybe 500 feet, I think he said, 300. Still really big, really obvious, and just sitting there. And everyone's like, wow, talking about it's a UFO. And this thing just takes off like a bullet, straight up, boom, a little dot, and it's gone. And so they're like, wow, this is amazing. And they're talking about it, and everyone's talking. Some people are like, I'm going to the newspapers, and I'm going to report this sighting. And they did, and so he's waiting the next day for a report on this in the local paper, and it doesn't come out. He waits another day, still nothing, so he goes there like 3 days afterwards with his friend who had seen it, because he knew the people there. He had done some photography work. And he's like, the sighting, you guys, did you hear about it? And they're like, what sighting? And he's like, what do you mean? And they're like, no, we didn't hear about it. And they showed no interest in it. And so that's when rumors started flying around town that the military had actually shown up and, stopped the story. I don't know if it's true, but that case where you mentioned, with humanoids, yeah.
What are you talking about, the portholes?
Yeah, that military did show up on that one. So that was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 1973. I don't have the name of the theater. This was a third-hand report. So I unfortunately was not able to interview the witness and can't really vouch for its authenticity, but certainly matches the types of encounters we're seeing. And this guy describes how he was at the drive-in with his girlfriend and a bunch of other people, and suddenly the projectionist, announces over the loudspeaker, hey everybody, look, it's a UFO. This is not a hoax. It's really a UFO. Look. Going over the theater. And he looks up as just everybody, and sure enough, it's this classic flying saucer with portholes. And his girlfriend sees it. She screams. She hides under the seat. She won't look. He gets out of the car. He's looking at it. Everyone's looking at it. It's pretty low. I think he said like 50, 100 feet, which is usually what people describe.
Mm-hmm.
Moving around above the theater. And he's looking through the portholes, and sure enough, there are people looking out. And all he can see are silhouettes. So he doesn't really see what type of beings these are, but they're clearly human, or humanoid, I should say. But all I could see, was a silhouette. And it was at some point, this object's just moving around and moving around. The military shows up and with jeeps and turns off the movie and clears out the theater and tells everyone not to talk. This is what he said. So,
well, and back then when the military told you not to talk, you didn't talk.
That's right. Right. Exactly. People were much more obeying of authority back then.
Has there been any reports of like people sitting in their car with popcorn and soda, and their popcorn and soda disappears, like it's being brought up into the craft, or I mean even people for that matter being abducted from these things?
No, I couldn't really find that. These are just, I would qualify them as sightings of the first kind, close encounters of the first kind. A few are close encounters of the second kind.
Hello, you have reached Preston Dennett.
That's my machine going, sorry.
That's all right. Beep. Leave your message at the beep. Are you still there?
Yeah, it's just the message is going.
Oh, okay.
Give me,
Here, I'll mute your volume and chat a minute. That way, nobody hears your message. I am going over the notes here, and I have you muted still, so I'm going to turn you on a little bit. But I wanted to ask you about this China encounter where it says 300 people are injured and 2 are killed when a low-flying UFO targets an open-air showing of a movie to a crowd of 3,000 plus people. So you're back on now. Did you hear that?
yeah, that was an amazing case, and one of the certainly most tragic ones, and also the most widely viewed.
Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This occurred in July 7th, 1977, Zhangpo County in Fujian, China. This was an outdoor movie, not really technically a drive-in, but I think it's the same phenomena. And this case is really interesting because it involved 3,000 people. That's a lot. And these 2 objects do what these objects do in these cases, come right down, and this time they came right down over the audience. Very low, so low that it lit up the entire area all around. People thought it was going to crash or come in for a landing, and they could feel the heat from these things. It was like 2 glowing, yellow, fiery, cigar-shaped objects, and just came right down over the audience and then took off. But by this point, it had caused a complete panic. More than 300 people were injured, and 2 children were trampled to death.
So you said they felt the heat on it. That would mean that their propulsion systems are producing heat.
Yeah, in some cases, or they're doing this on purpose. This would be a close encounter of the second kind that's affecting the environment. And there are a number of these cases which are close encounters of the second kind. I don't think people are being abducted, but there are a few cases that make me wonder, like what happened at the Ascot Park drive-in in August 1974. Yeah, I know this guy as well. So I got his testimony firsthand. Scott Santa is his name. And he's there at this drive-in in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. And this object, it's larger than the actual screen. It's larger than the parking lot. It's massive. Comes right over the screen from behind it, kind of. And it's hard to see until suddenly it's just over the screen itself. It's a giant triangular-shaped craft. And boomerang maybe, no lights on it, flat black. Comes right over the screen and boom, the screen goes out. And instantly all the lights go out in the entire theater, the snack stand, everything around, any cars that were on coming in or out. Everything is just dead black as this thing goes over the theater very slowly, doesn't appear to stop, just moves, and then moves off. And as soon as it's, no longer over the cars themselves, just like a switch is flipped, everything comes just zoom right back on. The movie is playing, the lights are come back to life, and everyone acts like normal. So at the time of the incident, they were all out of their cars, staring, zombified, almost just amazed, no panic. But as soon as it's gone, everybody forgot. They completely forgot what had just happened.
Oh, they just totally forgot.
Yep, this is something we see in abduction cases. And it does happen in sightings. It's not as common, but I've certainly, seen it in sightings. But this was weird because it's a lot of people. And he said himself included, just got back in the car and started watching the movie. He remembers going to the bathroom after that, waiting in line, the snack stand, but didn't remember a darn thing until 3 years later or so. He's at a bookstore and he sees Edward Ruppelt's book. Edward Ruppelt was the head of Project Blue Book and wrote this book called Unidentified Flying Objects, and sees the word UFO, and this just comes flooding back into his brain, to his mind. he remembered all of it. And now he's wondering, could he have been abducted? He remembers like the air felt heavy, it was hard to move, his ears popped. And this thing was like 50 feet overhead, very low.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think that's a case where there could be something more than just a sighting.
It's amazing how they have the ability to make people forget things. And you got to wonder how many people have seen things or have been abducted that just don't have any recollection of it whatsoever.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot. and that's why I always wonder about, when people say, oh, there's this many UFO sightings or this many people have been abducted. I'm like, you're vastly underestimating it. I can tell you that for sure. And I've got like 100 cases of drive-in encounters. I'm betting it's 100 times more than that. Maybe 10, but you have 10,000, 100,000. And I was counting all the people who were witnesses. I'm like, all right, there's 200 per a case, right? We're talking a lot of people here, because that's 200 times 100. We're getting up there to 200,000. It's probably more than that.
Wow. And just think of the drive-in theaters are going to be making a comeback. How many more sightings we're going to start seeing again?
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I'm not sure if it's ever going to be like it was in some of these early cases, but I sure hope so.
Well, yeah, especially now that everybody has cell phones and can videotape them.
Yeah, there's the 4 most recent cases, they all tried, and they weren't able to capture it. One time it just zipped away, and the others, it didn't show up. But here's a case I've got to mention because it's just so crazy, and I think typifies these type of encounters. This was in Mentor, Ohio, mid-1960s, when this cigar-shaped object comes down over the theater, and it hovers for a full half an hour until the owners of, the people in the audience started getting really nervous and screamed at the projectionist to turn off the movie, which they did. So they turned off the movie, and this is when the show began. This cigar-shaped object suddenly turns vertical. It was horizontal. It goes vertical, and one by one releases 10 discs, 10 little flying saucers. Actually, not that little. That's when they realized how big this thing really was. And these 10 discs start putting on a show, start dancing around, darting at right angles, turning, flying back and forth, and putting all these non-conventional, non-ballistic maneuvers for some time. And then finally, they all line up in a column, in a single row, and return to the cigar-shaped craft one by one, darting inside. The cigar-shaped craft turns horizontal again and takes off. Now, you can't tell me that's not a show. I mean, right?
Yeah, it's trying to entertain.
Yeah, I think there's exactly what they're doing here, and that's their agenda. That's why they're doing this. It's not, it's more than just, here's a fun show for the evening. It's we're real, we are here. I think that's their main message, and I think they're doing it for a reason. I think ultimately they are trending towards and pushing for open official contact, and this is their way of announcing their presence to sort of a large group of people, but not everybody all at once.
Well, if they want to announce their presence to everybody all at once, all they need to do is come down into a stadium during a Super Bowl or something.
It's going to happen, and there are a few cases. And this, you'd think that, I wonder about that, because this is kind of what they're doing. And yet a lot of these cases literally just slid through notice. They did get into the local newspapers, but a lot of people tried to call newspapers and couldn't get any interest. Called the police. The police did not care. So most of these cases do go underreported, and they weren't noticed in the UFO field really for decades. And these are very widely viewed sightings. So I'm kind of curious about that. If they would show up at a concert, how much publicity is it going to get?
Well, hopefully, if they do it in front of a live television audience, they're going to get quite a response.
Yeah, and I think it will happen at some point, because we're seeing what looks like a escalation of contact.
So have they ever done anything to affect the movie itself? Like projected anything of their own on the screen, or tried to manipulate what people were seeing?
To some extent, yeah. Uh, I would say that there's a good handful of cases in which that's happened. There was one midnight showing of The Exorcist at the East Park Drive-In in Syracuse, New York, June 1974, where the witnesses said, "Yeah, this thing came right over the theater."
All right, why don't you hang on a minute? We're gonna go ahead and take a quick break and let you get that, and we'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. And welcome back to Conflict Radio. We're kind of in the middle of a story. Why don't you go ahead and tell and start that over again if you don't mind?
Yeah, they definitely do affect drive-ins sometimes. And one case, June 1974, the East Park Drive-In in Syracuse, New York. A group of friends were at the midnight showing of The Exorcist when one of them noticed a circle of light shining down in the lot over their car. And at the same time, there was beams being shined on the theater itself. And they look outside, and there's this glowing disc. It's right over their car, and it's definitely affecting the movie. It's very strange. It wasn't, actually doing anything to the movie itself other than shining a beam of light on it. But it scared them, and they ended up taking off. But there are cases where it's affected the screen in different ways. There was a case in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, 1978, Blue Ridge Drive-In, and nobody noticed anything strange until these little speakers, that you attach to your car, started getting all staticky, and suddenly this object appears. It's making a low humming noise, and as it comes right over the screen, which they do, this picture on the screen became all weirdly distorted. And it just hovered there for a few moments and then took off, and the screen went back to normal. And the movie started playing again, except by this point, half the people had screeched out and left. Sometimes it freaks people out.
Yeah, it probably freaked me out a little bit. If I'm in a drive-in theater and a UFO comes in, I mean, I'm freaked out for sure, but I'm almost kind of excited that I'm witnessing this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Some cases are complete panic, and other people are really excited. Here's an interesting case, and this is another one that convinces me they really want to be seen. This is at the Portland Twin, Scarborough, Maine, June 15th, 1975. This object is slowly approaching the theater, and it moves over the shopping center next door. He can see a lady looks up at it, drops her shopping bag, and is running away. So he realizes this is strange, and this thing comes right for the theater and parks like 50, 75 feet overhead, right over the screen, and causes complete panic. I mean, people didn't even bother to remove the speakers. They just drove off, screeching out, and pretty much cleared out the entire theater, except for about 10 cars, including the witness, who stayed. And once that happened, this is a twin theater. This object lifts up, goes over to the other screen, and clears out that one. So this is what they're doing. They're like showing themselves off. Yeah, sometimes people panic, sometimes they don't. Like one case in Belleville, Illinois, October 1975, the movie's Last Tango in Paris. This object appears and puts on a long display. They end up turning off the movie because people weren't watching it. And more than 100 people were just watching this object darting around until a jet appeared, a military jet, and chased this thing off.
And so they don't like the military jets then, I'm taking.
Yeah, well, I think it's more the military doesn't like them because they can fly, circles around our planes. And
So
there's another case, where it was following a plane that moved over the theater and kept following planes as they passed over the theater.
yeah, that's just so fascinating that they're all into the theater like this. So what would you say in your research would be the most widely viewed case?
I would say it's the Zhangpo China case for sure, 3,000 people. So that one for sure. But generally, these theaters have well over 100 people. I'm going to say the average is closer to 400. It's really hard to say. But what's interesting is there's so many witnesses to this, and yet no one's been talking about this for so long. So there's this weird sort of self-censoring aspect to the whole UFO phenomena. The cover-up has been really effective, making people fear ridicule and fearing being disbelieved has been really effective until, recently. Now people are ready to talk. So I'm really encouraged. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of disclosure and movements towards disclosure. People are done.
Well, they're done being lied to, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, when these things are... Most people believe in UFOs at this point, according to Gallup polls. Most people believe our government is covering it up. We know this is a real phenomena. And so if the government continues to deny it, they start to look foolish and lose credibility. And that's why they're disclosing, because they don't want to lose control of this subject. And if they don't disclose, they will, because we know it's real.
Yeah. Now that China case you're talking about, you got to wonder how something like that would even get out of China. Is there besides drive-in theaters, is there a lot of UFO activity in China that has come out of there? Like just in general?
No, I don't get a lot of current cases. I got that case from the one book I have, UFOs Over China, by Paul Dong. He's really the go-to guy and only wrote that one book. And yes, cases do come out every now and then because we do have a information age. But I think most, no. Like with the schoolyard encounters, I found cases all over the world in just about everywhere. I mean, I'm not going to say every country, obviously, but multiple countries in South America, all across the U.S., all across Canada, England, Europe, Africa, Australia. Didn't find one in Russia, which I know they're there, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of UFO information coming out of Russia, is hard to get, or was.
Yeah. So if we can move on to, I guess what you were talking about just a little while ago, disclosure. How do you think that we're on the path to that now? I mean, obviously you were just mentioning that you think that you do. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I think we are, because I've been in this field a long time, and when I first got in, people were like, they're going to disclose next year. I'm like, really? And of course it didn't happen, and there'd always be these rumors flying around, and there was this sort of weird pattern of very soft disclosure. And by that I mean every now and then there'd be a high-level person from within government or military who would sort of go public and say, yeah, this is real. Or we'd discover little documents here and there. But officially there's no movement. There was no movement from official government at all, and has never been until, 2 years ago when we started seeing this first Tic Tac footage and the Pentagon release. And it's slowly ramping up. So yeah, I am excited about it. And I do think this is significant. And I'm surprised there's not more, to do about it.
I mean, even if there was, that everybody's so busy talking about other stuff on the news, you wouldn't hear much about it unless they actually landed in the middle of a football field or something.
Yep, which, wouldn't surprise me at some point. We had the Phoenix Lights, and what was that, 96, I think? And that was just before cell phones were really kind of breaking in. If that were to happen now, can you imagine? People would be ready. And
goodness, there'd be thousands and thousands of videos of that if the cell phones were around then.
Yeah, and that's going to happen. I have no doubt. We're kind of overdue for one of their publicity waves. And this is something they do regularly, whether it's Gulf Breeze, Florida in the 1990s, or Hudson Valley wave in the 80s. There was the Topanga Canyon wave, 1992. there's these waves of sightings. Stevensville was a big one in Texas. That was a relatively recent one, but that was what, 2014, 2016? That was a while back. They're way overdue.
Have you ever looked at like waves of sightings to see what the difference is in years between the waves, so to speak? You know what I mean? Like is it every 20 years? Is it every 30 years? Like, is there a certain kind of window that maybe you've been able to figure out that they're coming in?
No, it's a very sort of capricious pattern. I mean, it's kind of a little all over the map, but there are weird things for sure. You'll have, like, what I notice with waves is often they'll pick like a small town outside of a large city center. We certainly saw that with Gulf Breeze, with the Hudson Valley wave, and that's what's true in the Topanga Canyon wave. But they'll like pick us a location somewhere on the globe. It's very global. They definitely don't favor one country over another, and just pull off this huge wave of sightings that makes it no doubt something is going on. France had one in 1954. Belgium had one in, I forget when theirs was, but it was 1990s or so. And they'll just target this area and say, okay, let's pull off one of these publicity stunts. Let's do Phoenix. Let's fly over Phoenix.
Yeah.
And it's every 5 years or so one of these will happen. There can be 2 in a row or 3 in a row and then none for a while. And yeah, like right now, it seems like we're due for a real major event. And I'm wondering if it's already happened but was effectively covered up, because some do not reach the media despite being really very dramatic events. They're successfully quashed.
Yeah, we had I guess there was something. Did you ever hear about that Brazilian crash or something that they were talking about?
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
And I looked into it, and research. I'm not in Brazil. I can't really do anything but surf the internet to look into it and sort of go through the grapevine and try and figure it out. But it seemed like a valid event, and then you heard nothing about it.
Yeah, Ryan Sprague, he wrote a book recently. I can't think of it right now off the top of my head.
Somewhere in the Skies.
Yeah, Somewhere in the Skies. He wrote a book. He's got some information on that. We've been trying to get him on the show to try to get some info on that Brazil thing with him. But I mean, just look at what happened in New Jersey. What was that, a week ago? Where they had that, it was a blimp. It was pretty obvious that it was a blimp. But everybody was pulling over to the side of the road and pulling out their cameras. I mean, it looks like the country's ready for it, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely been an uptick in sightings since the whole shutdown.
Did you see that video of the blimp in New Jersey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, It was obviously a blimp, but I mean, just everybody's reaction to it was quite remarkable.
Yeah, I think people are ready. People all say, "Oh, we'll panic." Yeah, some people are going to panic. I think there's going to be certain segments of the population who are, very entrenched in perhaps rigid beliefs that are going to have a little bit of a hard time. I know I did. I was really upset when I found out UFOs were real. And I didn't, find out by seeing one, which would have been a real shock. So it's going to be tough for some people. But I think overall, no, there's not going to be any panic. Are you kidding? We've gone through far worse. We've gone through various plagues and natural disasters all throughout human history. We've been hit by one thing after another. So this will be taken right in stride.
Yeah, consider the vastness of space, right? I mean, it's a lot of space out there for us to just be sitting here all by ourselves. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think people realize though how sort of saturated this phenomena is. Because if you look at like National UFO Reporting Center, NUFORC, and MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, they're receiving reports daily. Not just one or two. A bunch of reports every single day. And I have to say that probably most people do not call UFO reporting centers. Particularly if you have a really dramatic encounter, you might not, if it's like an abduction. Because for whatever reason, I always ask people, did you report this? And most say no. So I'm going to guess that the 20 accounts that they receive per day could be times by 10 easily, which would be 200 per day, which means that right now someone's seeing a UFO. Right now someone's being abducted. This is an ongoing phenomena. There are a lot of ETs out there. It's not just one or two. There is a whole community, which we're kind of quarantined from.
Yeah. Do you think that they're all kind of like hanging out at the space bar? You know, like talking, you know, making fun of us?
Yeah, we don't know much about ET culture, but certainly people who are taking onboard craft and who are having sort of what I would call very extensive encounters and perhaps not so frightening anymore, and they've learned how to interact more, are taken to see these kinds of things where ETs are working together. And we don't know exactly what level of government they have, but we know that there are UFOs filled with plants and nurseries and alien zoos. And people see animals. There's all kinds of things on board UFOs that people, I think, would really surprise people.
Do you think that there's some species out there that kind of collect us as pets?
I hope not, but it wouldn't surprise me because it's a wide, wide universe, and not everyone is going to be our friends. Having done years of research, I'm going to say that yes, I've run into some very scary cases that have me concerned. And like there was, I don't know if we say pets, but like experiments, yeah. There are cases where people will be taken on board a UFO and they say people in glass tubes or whatever, and they're not moving. And some are not alive. They're being, operated on, or they're vivisected or autopsied.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like even humans, I mean, we have hamsters in cages and fish in tanks and cats and dogs. I mean, I'm just curious, how I mean.
Yeah, but I wouldn't worry. I'm not afraid of UFOs.
I mean, wouldn't they have pets?
Not that I know of. I'm curious about that, but I haven't had any reports of them, like with cats and dogs or birds or anything like that. So we don't know anything about ET music either. I've heard people tell me, yeah, they do communicate in tones and things like this, and the music is a big part of their life. But in terms of alien art, we've got some symbols and stuff. The inside of UFOs are very aesthetic. They're often described as pastel colored, with beautiful lines, very well constructed. So there's definitely a sense of aesthetics among them.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially if they're doing the crop circles. I mean, some of that stuff's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And the uniforms as well. The uniforms they wear do have symbols on them sometimes, and they're very nicely made. Sometimes shiny silver or olive green or tan. But we really are at such a starting point in terms of understanding their culture. I know there are people out there who do, but getting them to, write their story, and that's another.
I mean, it's fascinating to think about. I mean, you talk about art or music or even their uniforms. What kind of, they must have a whole economy. I mean, what do they have, an alien spaceship that just goes around and it's their job to just make uniforms and pass out uniforms, or do they just make I mean, we think, oh well, they can just make everything appear, or they can manipulate matter, to form a uniform or whatever. But maybe there's a uniform making spaceship, that just goes around and they make uniforms. Like, oh crap, we need more uniforms. We need to go meet up with this UFO or something.
I imagine there's something to that because what we do know is they cooperate and they're very telepathic. And I was talking to a lady today who's a contactee, and she's like, oh yeah, they work very well together to complete tasks, and everything is all about cooperation.
No, so it's absolutely fascinating to think about, all of the all the aspects that they could bring to our world. I mean, think of what we could do. With their technology on this planet today. I mean, a lot of people say we already have a lot of their technology, but I don't think we
Yeah,
have all of it.
I'm sure we have a lot more than we're seeing publicly, too. But yeah, according to Colonel Corso, and no one's been able to fully debunk him or anything, and what lasers and integrated circuit and fiber optics and Kevlar and a bunch of other technology has been boosted by ETs and the technology we received directly from Roswell. Now, I don't know if that's true, but certainly he's not the only one saying that. And we did have a really dramatic rise in the last 100 years compared to the, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 that we've been going through
Yeah.
as almost, savages.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, they're talking. We have like nanobots now. Like we can fly around that are like the size of mosquitoes. With little
yeah,
cameras on them and stuff. And what we're talking Roswell was 80 years ago.
yeah, 1947. So, yeah,
Yeah, I
just
mean
about
that's quite a jump
75.
in our technology.
Yeah, and I certainly wonder about it. And according to a lot of the whistleblowers in places like Area 51 and really all over the U.S., these military bases, they're describing technology that's very Star Trek, very advanced. In fact, I wrote a book on UFO healing cases, and some of the whistleblowers made some really interesting comments, because if you look at UFO accounts, the most common thing, onboard UFO accounts, most people describe being physically examined. It's the most common thing people experience. And they often describe UFOs in very medical terms, and even the ETs, like doctors. So there's a strong medical theme that runs through all of this. And in a way, UFOs are like floating hospitals. So we have some of these UFOs. We've captured the technology, and they've tried to take some of the technology out of this. And according to some of these whistleblowers, they have healing technology that can do amazing things. One thing was described like this jewel, this sort of handheld stone, and it slides over the body and can detect any tumor, any cyst that's in the body. And it gives a readout that they can't quite understand, but gives a holographic image and everything.
Wow.
They've got stuff that's very much like anti-aging technology and can stitch up wounds and all kinds of stuff. And
Do you
it's
think that
not being released.
Do you think that they have money, that they use money, or is it just no object to them anymore?
I have no accounts of any type of money being used, except for perhaps ETs in public places where have used gold nuggets or something to pay for goods. There's a few cases like that, which are generally pretty old. But no, there's no indication at all that any of these ET societies use money.
Well, that'd be pretty interesting. Hopefully the human race can join them. I mean, maybe that's what it is. It's all being covered up because, that would mean everybody's equal. Nobody has more money than other people. Who knows?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough road for us, I think, to get there, but I sure hope we do.
Yeah, I mean that definitely. I mean, could you see in? I think it was Star Trek 4 where Kirk and the crew had come back to Earth in the 80s or something, and they were like, "Oh, they're still using money here. We have to find some money." They don't use money in Star Trek. I just find that fascinating. That if they're covering it all up because, once we have ET tech and get involved with the ETs, there's, you have no need for anything,
Yeah, I think that's one of the weird conflicts right now that's pushing disclosure, because we have free energy and we don't need to use oil, and it's destroying our world. So there has to be a change. And this could lead to a much higher standard of lifestyle for a lot of people, in terms of healing, in terms of energy, in terms of hours worked. Because let's face it, we're still workers, most people on this planet, and it's not right. There's no need for it. There's plenty of food. We have the resources and the technology to live lives of leisure and exploration and science and learning, which is, I think, what the ETs are really trying to wake us up to.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's humans' downfall is greed.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Man, these days, what the distribution of wealth is almost entirely in the 2% of the population. That's ridiculous. That cannot go on. And I think that the day of these 1%ers is over. I really do. I think there's going to be a huge, I don't know, a civil war or something, but society is going to change massively. This is certainly a message a lot of experiencers get from the ETs.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be that we're in some kind of great awakening.
Yeah, so I'm pretty hopeful about how all this rolls out. And I'm not afraid of UFOs because when someone's taken on board, yeah, it's scary. Yeah, you might be physically examined. There are reports of painful examinations and experiments, for sure. But there's, like I said, 300 recorded cases of healings. And people are also taken to the engine room and they're shown how that craft works. Or they're taken to this little projection room and they're given warnings about the environment, nuclear proliferation, and, human violence and things like this. And other great stuff. They're taught healing. Or they're shown, all kinds of spiritual stuff, how to go out of body, past lives. There's this whole weird spiritual aspect that is very prominent. So that's why, ultimately, I'm not afraid of it. I think most of these guys are very much like us, but far more advanced.
Yeah. And good-hearted. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Not all.
Hopefully they don't.
Some of these grays come down and they just want their genetic material because their race is dying. They're not emotional. These are soldiers. These are doctors who are coming down and they've got a job to do. And they scare the living daylights out of people. That's not right. You can't just kidnap people out of their bedroom. Come on.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, since you're actually a couple questions, just because you've been at this for so long and you know so much. I'm curious. We just did a show on the Cherokee, as the blue-eyed people or the moon-eyed people. And I was curious, is there a race of aliens that we know out there that are only like 3 feet tall?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that turns up. I couldn't give you like a name. Now we have the term grays because we see a lot of those. But some of those are 3 feet tall. Generally, we believe that those are android, perhaps. Partly robotic, but in terms of other places, like South America has a lot of very short humanoid reports.
Right.
And we get some that are a foot tall.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Some which are considerably tall. One guy I talked to, he's like, I hate to say it, this is like 9 feet, 10 feet tall, and he would kind of shift down to 9, but he says honestly they were 10 because he's like 6 feet tall and they were more than twice his height.
Wow. Now, have you heard of a race called the Dominators?
The Dominators? No, I can't say I have, but
okay. And I know you've heard of the Reptilians.
Yeah. We don't know a lot about who these guys are, where they come from. Even reptilians, people say, well, there's good ones and there's bad ones. What I find interesting about reptilians is I don't get a lot of those reports, but when I do, it's almost never like on a UFO. They come into someone's room at night, or it's out in the Everglades, or out in the forest, or the cave areas, or something like that.
Yeah, they're more earthbound, right? The reptilians?
Supposedly, that's
interesting.
Yeah, the experts say that these are intelligent dinosaurs who never, have lived here a very long time. This is really their planet. We're latecomers, but I don't know. I've never really specialized in reptilians. I don't get a whole lot of reports of that.
Yeah, I'm just picking your brain for out of my own curiosity. So, what are your future projects? What are you out to do next?
Oh, I'm always keeping busy. I put out this series of books, the Not From Here series, because that explores the more weird and unusual cases, like UFOs that hover over mines, or prisons, or graveyards, or just weird cases. So I'm putting out another book on that sort of stuff. Working on another book like onboard UFO encounters and inside UFOs, both of which covered really extensive cases of contact. So those are my favorite kind of books. I love Roswell, don't get me wrong. It is a bit of a dead horse, though. I'm not going to give up on it, but I like to explore new information most of all.
And I think I had somebody on. I had a guest on, and we were talking about Roswell, and he said, the biggest thing with that is that everybody's dead now. There's no new information coming from that.
Yeah, and the problem is there is new stuff out there. I mean, there's the craft. Show it to us. Someone's got it. We know they have it. It's ridiculous for them to deny it. The Air Force's own book there's 50 books, something like that, on the Roswell incident. I have maybe 10 of them. And the Air Force's book on this is ludicrous. It's a travesty. It shouldn't be legal. Someone should sue them over it. It's a pack of lies. How they can put out lies like that is beyond me, with our tax dollars.
Yeah, if it's a weather balloon, show us the photos of it.
They know it's not. There was bodies. I mean, what are they talking about?
Yeah, even if it, whatever it was, they still have it. So if it was just something stupid and a weather balloon or God knows what it was, that it was just some lame thing, it wasn't a UFO, why don't you take the cameras in and show it to us?
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about what's happening now with the Pentagon and this UFO disclosure, because they said, quote, materials from otherworldly vehicles. So they know, and they've said they know, so that should have created a firestorm. Every abductee out there should have started suing the government, say, hey, you're not protecting me, I'm being abducted. Now that you've admitted UFOs are real, you admit that abductions are real, in a sense. So far that hasn't happened, but I think we're going to start to see stuff like that as this subject is pulled into the mainstream. People are going to be starting to ask for some real answers. Show us the gun camera footage off of these Air Force jets that have been chasing these things for decades. Show us that. The Tic Tac footage was great. I've seen better, though, honestly, on some of these UFO shows.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So we know that they've got photographs of these things landing. We know they have photographs of aliens. They've got the bodies. I know they want to pull this out in as gentle way as possible, but let's just rip this Band-Aid off. I mean, quit showing us these films and pieces of metal. It's insulting. It's disingenuous. And who do you think you're fooling? Go all the way.
Yeah, you're right. Rip the Band-Aid off. Get it over with. I agree with you.
Yeah, the reason I say that is because no one knows what's happening right now. You ask the average person on the street about UFO disclosure, did you hear the government said UFOs are real? They don't know. And those that do are like, oh yeah, I did hear about that. But what about that reality show? I'm like, this is a very serious subject, and it needs to be pulled into that arena.
Yeah, it most certainly does. Well, Preston Dennett, your book, UFOs at the Drive-In, I hope it does really, really well. It sounds fascinating. We certainly appreciate you coming on the show today.
Hey, my pleasure. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
I love talking about this stuff.
Well, anytime we can get you on, it certainly is awesome to have you. We love having you here. And until next time, UFOs at the Drive-In is the title today, and I hope it does really well. I hope you have a great go with it. And again, thanks for coming on.
Hey.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks. I do have a website. If you Google my name, it's Preston Dennett book.weebly.com. All my books are there, excerpts. You can buy the book through the website or on Amazon. Also contact me if you've got a story or a question or a comment. I always love hearing from people. And yeah, thanks again. This was awesome.
Yeah, I almost forgot to get that part in there where you gotta let everybody know where to find you.
Hey, I appreciate it.
All right, and we'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. That's going to do it for us today. That was Preston Dennett. Hopefully, go check out his website. Go check out his book. It seems really, really interesting. Remember, you can always find us on the internet, www.conflictradio.net. You can like our videos and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's called the Conflict Radio Network. You can also find us on Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Well, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back on Tuesday with another show. I know we were supposed to do 3 shows this week, but the guest canceled again, so we got him rescheduled for sometime in October. I don't know the exact date, but one of our October shows, we're going to try to get him on again. So until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe.